Good evening, everyone. This is the Municipal Council Combined Session, Wednesday, October 12th, 2022, 6 p.m., and also the appeal for Charlie Brown's. Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Brusher.
Here.
Councilmember Coyle.
Here.
Councilmember Harris. Here. Councilmember Patel.
Here.
Councilmember Patil.
Here.
Councilmember Pointer.
Present.
Councilmembership Freeman.
Here.
Adequate notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meeting Act of 1975 has been provided by the annual notice sent to the Home News Tribune, Star Ledger, Sentinel, and Desi Talk on November 25th, 2021, and posted in Main Lobby Municipal Complex on that same date.
Council members, review of the minutes for September 14th and the combined meeting minutes for September 18th. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, report from all council members. From my left, Council Member John Pointer.
None at this time, sir.
Councilmember Aja Patil.
None at this time, sir.
Councilmember Nish Patel.
None at this time, sir.
Okay, Councilmember Margot Harris.
Yes. The Education Committee, the liaison committee to the Board of Education met yesterday, October 11th, from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And issues that were discussed, we had a presentation from Bob Deal, the Chief of Staff to the Mayor, and he was discussing the Clara Barton Library, which has been underutilized, and that it is going to be turned over into a special needs facility as a supplement to the in-school services, and this would be for off hours. The library itself will move to a location on Amboy. It will be smaller, possibly with a bookmobile. With regard to the master plan, on October 19th, there will be a public meeting in council chambers here at 6 p.m. Gloria Avenue is it's going to be resident parking only and right turn only onto Plainfield. Then there's road improvement at Gloria and Woodrow Wilson Drive that is scheduled. Sergeant Semino stated that, this was Lisa Semino, stated there are 8 new applicants for crossing guards, which is really great news. However, there will be a 2-month turnaround because of fingerprinting and other bureaucratic issues that are going to delay the actual hiring of these guards. Doug Schneider had, I think also there's a traffic study being done for Hartstone to make it one-way. It will be on the 10/26 council agenda. And finally, Doug Schneider brought up the possibility of making available library cards for every student. That is my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Richard Brescher.
None at this time, sir.
Council Vice President.
We had a meeting for the Master Plan Committee on October 19th in these chambers at 7 p.m. We would act like all people to come out that would like to be a part, that like to be involved in the master plan for Edison, New Jersey. It's not a closed deal. We like to hear from everybody from the community and to get more information for them. So we will convene in these chambers make sure on October 19th at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Council Vice President. For the DPW committee, I'm still waiting for a meeting. We should have that hopefully for next week. And council members, for any points of light before I begin?
Yes, Council President?
Yes.
Just want to remind people that actually at this moment upstairs there is the new art exhibit from the Edison Art Society, and the artist is Doug Size, who specializes in doing waterscapes. And so you can go and check it out at any time. It should be here for at least a month. Thank you.
Any other council members for points of light?
They had an awards ceremony for the law enforcement officers on the 29th at Pines Manor, which was beautiful indeed. That we have our police department is fabulous. and the amount of awards that we're giving out for all the valor and all the honor, it needs to be applauded within our town. And I guess this Saturday, coming up on October 15th, at the Thomas Edison building, we have the 6 to 9:30 Horror Trail.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Also, in addition to the other points of light we have is on Saturday, October 28th, from 12 to 8, there's going to be Diwali celebration at Paving Park. On Saturday, October 29th, 2 to 7, we have Rocktoberfest at 926 Amboy Avenue, ran by the Edison Chamber of Commerce. On Saturday, October 29th, 12 to 4, we have a trick or treat at Lake Papiani. The rain date is October 30th, hosted by the Edison PD and DPW. Includes costume and contest and free candy, music, raffle, and the Touch a Truck, which is actually really neat to do. And I want to thank DPW for putting that together. Also, just to lighten up some more to Saturday's October 15th event, Oktoberfest Festival at Thomas Edison Tower at 37 Christie Street is they have music, face painting, a pumpkin patch, and zombie slide. They also have costume contest at 1 p.m. Again, a costume contest at 1 p.m. And participants must register by October 14th at the community Pass website, announced by Mayor Sam Joshi. That's all I have. Any other council members? Again, last call for points of light. Hearing none, moving to number 7 from the Business Administrator, A through C. A through E. Any questions or comments from council members?
Council President?
Yes. Councilmember Brush, you have the floor.
The C, $9,400 for the DJ audio service for the winter market. I guess this is because we already expended $11,000 in DJ music. Could I just find out where we spent the $11,000 for the DJ music? What event was that?
Are you saying on a prior resolution, we spent 11,000?
That's what the backup said, yes. It said that we already expended 11,000, so we needed to put this on because the 9 would bring us over to 17. So I'm saying, where did we spend $11,000 on music?
It was actually several events. They have DJs at several recreation events, like the dances and the activities. I would have to run a report to tell you the exact events. But it's not all at one event. It's a couple thousand at each event. I could run a report for you, but I just don't have it in front of me.
Can you give me a report on that? And then also what we spent on music last year?
DJ music or music in general?
Well, this is DJ, so I guess
Just the
DJ
DJ.
music, yes. Next question would be E. A procurement card, would that be a slang term for a credit card?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
But in the purchasing world, that's what they call it.
okay.
Because it has a lot of rules and regulations on it.
And is that frowned upon in the purchasing world?
It is, because, obviously we don't like it, but you still have to follow all the local public contracts law, and it has to be in someone's name, it will be in my name, and I will hold it, and it will only be for true emergencies.
And who gets to use it? You decide who gets to use the card?
Yes.
And then you
But I
will-
actually have to, really, because
You will
it'll be
vet,
in my
and
name.
you will be the one responsible.
Yes, I will be.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and any other council members for A through E?
Yes, Council President.
Yes.
How much is the limit on that card? 100,000?
We actually will set that.
Okay. And one more question on C as well. I was told that it will be covered by donations. Is that true?
Yes, it will be.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from A
So
through
he's
E?
covered by donation?
Council members. Hearing none, I just want to add to the agenda from the business administrator, we have 3 items, will be F, G, and H. I just want to read them to you. There's a resolution rejecting the bid for the basic life support services and medical transportation services, R 668-10022.
What?
R 668-10022. Okay, and then G was the resolution awarding the contract to purchase order for the Garden State Fireworks Incorporated for fireworks display for the Diwali celebration R6691022.
You added those?
We're adding these.
Getting them. I emailed them today.
Oh, okay, we don't have a paper copy.
I know.
Yeah.
Can I
Are we
get one more?
canceling them? I didn't see them.
I have one more, Councilman Brescia, and you can have the floor. I have H, resolution authorizes the Township Council to grant permission to Garden State Fireworks to discharge fireworks for the Diwali celebration at Lake Papiani on October 22nd, 2022, is R670-10222. Councilman Brescia?
Yes, is this to cancel contracts or this is to add contracts?
Are you talking about F?
Well,
We're
the
adding
three that
this.
you're adding to the agenda.
Rejecting a bid.
F was rejecting a
Rejecting
bid.
That was number one. Awarding the contract to Garden State for the Diwali celebration.
I'll tell you what, can I just get the three numbers, 668 and 670, right? And what was the other one?
668 and 669. That's
That's
it.
it.
670 is the resolution from the fire department allowing them to discharge at that fireworks.
Okay, I haven't seen it, so I'm just going to pull it and I'll abstain, that's all. Thank you.
I think, Council President, I think these were emailed today morning or afternoon. Yeah.
This afternoon, because I had to wait for one.
Combined meeting,
Understood.
emailed, last couple minutes, I'll just abstain. Thank you.
If something changes and you see it in your email, Councilman Brescher, at that time, you'll make your decision. Okay, any other questions or comments for F, G, and H that were added to the agenda for the business administrator?
Okay.
Hearing no comments from council members, moving to 8 from the Department of Finance. A, B, C, D, E, and F. Any questions or comments for council members? Hearing none, moving forward to the Department of Law. A, B, C, and D. Any questions or comments?
Council President?
Yes, Councilman Brescher, you have the floor.
D, I did get some information today. I do appreciate what I did get. I have a question. It was my understanding that there were at least 3 people that were applying for licenses here in Edison. What is the criteria? How do we go about, how does it get approved? What is the process for that?
All I can share is that any individual who, or any entity which wishes to come forward for a resolution of preference or support from the council, generally would reach out to members of the administration. Administration would, by and large, meet with those individuals to do some sort of informal vetting, and then bring it to council if they felt that it was worthy of such support.
Now, let me ask you a question, though. That vetting, wouldn't that be part of the paperwork that we would have received?
I mean, it certainly, I mean, I don't know if there'd be paperwork to support that vetting, but I'm certain that there were, I would suspect there were meetings that were held to get a greater understanding of who these folks are who are seeking the resolution of support.
Right, that's what we were kind of asking for, was the information on that. But I'd like a list of the vetting process that the administration is doing, because we've been kept in the dark. This is the second license that has come up. I know that another person has applied. I don't know why we haven't seen that person here either. So what is the criteria that they're setting? I don't know.
Thank you, Councilman Brescher. Your comments will reflect the record. Madam Clerk, make sure they're in the minutes. Any other questions or comments from the Department of Law? A, B, C, and D. Hearing none, moving to Department of Planning and Engineering. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. Any questions or comments from council members?
Council President,
Yes, Councilman Brescher, you have the floor.
I was stumped on D. If somebody can explain to me what this is for? Where it's for Swale/church property survey. The reason why I say it is there is no Swales Church.
Council President, through you?
Yes, if you
Yeah,
feel you would
in my
like to
paperwork, as soon as I find
engage.
it, there's a map showing exactly what has to be Do you have with you? I've been told you had the map.
The map is probably inside that Google Drive.
Yeah, it's the backup.
Yes, I couldn't get on Google Drive, but, okay.
in the other drive, too. You want to see it?
No, it wasn't in the scan, in the pack that we got.
If I can approach Mr. Council
Yeah.
President?
Well, here, you want to see my copy?
Yeah, let me see.
We need to survey this portion of the property it's owned by.
For this.
Yes, sir.
And let me ask you, why would we need to survey it?
So we know exactly where the bounds.
After all these years, we
If you work on
don't?
this property at all, you have to have a survey. So they probably want to make sure it's.
And is this part of Swales Park? And here's the church. Trying to find that road. Oh, that's the parking lot.
Yes.
Okay, so we own this piece. Swales Park we own. The church owns.
5 acre piece.
The cemetery. Who owns the cemetery?
I'm not sure.
The survey's
Okay.
going to identify that.
Yeah.
We own the cemetery? And what's the reason for us wanting to do, what are we planning on doing there?
I guess we're taking over the property, that's all I know. To do that, we have to have a survey to convey title or whatever the deal is. If they want to do it.
Can the administration tell me what their intent is for the property?
Okay, Laura, could we have an email chain tomorrow morning to Councilman Brescher with details of what the purpose of this survey is for that? Councilman Brescher, I do know at the one time area was used for the, I think the recreation was there at one time, right? They had an actual, an area there for, not DPW, part of DPW was housed in that area, so I'd imagine there's some lot line challenges of what we owned and didn't own and what exactly is ours and what is the entire park. But
Yeah, but Council President, I heard within the cemetery, I was discussing it earlier with someone about that being some historical stuff that is located within that cemetery. I spoke to Walter Stoschel about it. And so, you know, that's the idea I'm getting from that by us owning that cemetery. I guess that they would have to survey it first and map out where the stuff is located at before they would move forward.
And they also have, I think, believes the Green Acres program requires that they map it identically so that it's in the stands with the New Jersey Department of DEP, NJDEP.
I know, but I mean, I guess what I'm saying is the church and the cemetery, I think, have been there since like 1800 or something. And now all of a sudden, there's a parcel here that we've never had surveyed. It just seemed odd, you know, that you wouldn't have had a survey before. So I'd like to know what we plan on doing, because you don't go out and get a survey, right, unless you're going to do something with it.
According to the NJDEP standards, we're supposed to know about the properties that are adjacent to our park properties, and that's the reason why I think they're surveying the property as standards for our own, to protect our own Green Acres property. I'm not sure there's any other future plans for this property right at this moment, and I can certainly check for you and have an answer for
Well,
you.
yeah, what I'm really asking for is somebody went to the administration and asked for this. Who is that person and why?
I don't know. I don't
Right.
know that.
Laura, that's really the question I have.
thank you, Councilman Brescher. Is there any other questions or comments you have, Councilman Brescher?
Yes, since I couldn't open that pack, on our street pavings, do we list the streets in that packet?
Yes, we have the list. I'm not sure if it was included in your packet. I know the information on the award is, but we do have the list of
That's what I'm saying.
streets.
Is it in the Google Drive? I didn't have access to Google Drive.
I got to be honest with you, I don't know if it was in the Google Drive, but I do have the list if you want to see it, and it was in the award itself. I'm sorry.
Oh, good, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Any other council comments from Department of Planning and Engineering, A through H?
Council President?
Yes, you have the floor, Councilman.
For C and E, it's a plan to develop the traffic signal in that area on Kilmer Road. I just want to verify, just for the record, if in the future, if there is no bike plan or bike path on that road, and would that still come back to the council to be voted on, David?
I'm sorry, can you ask that question?
So if we award this to CME for the planning, and they plan it, and we are not happy with the plan because it doesn't have certain things that we're looking for as a council, can we still get to vote on it in the future date?
Vote on the plan itself?
Or, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council members? For A through H in the Department of Planning and Engineering?
No.
Hearing none, moving to 11 from the Department of Public Works, A, B, C, and D. Any questions or comments from council members?
Council President?
Yes, Councilmember
Uh,
Patel,
B,
you have the
in the backup paperwork, there's a error. The 50,000, if you added, what number was that? It's asking for 50,000, and that would add up to 115K. But then in therefore section, it adds an additional 50,000 and asks for 215K.
So this is actually change order number 2. If you read it, so you're saying that it adds to 215 because it tells you that the first change order was 50. So it goes through the whole process of the first change order was, we had an award of 115, we added 50,000 for the first change order. That made it 165.
Okay.
So then we're adding another 50 on the second change order, which makes it 215. So we just give you the whole process on the reso.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions or comments from council members from the Department of Public Works, A, B, C, and D?
Council President?
Yes, Councilmember, you have the floor.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that maybe the administration do some bidding. I believe A, we're getting from the cooperative. And that's the tires.
I'm so sorry, I missed what you said.
Oh, I said the tires for A.
Yeah.
That's from the cooperative we're buying them, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes. Yes, we get them through a co-op, state contract.
Yeah. Is there any way for us to bid this to see if we can get a lower number? Because I know that there's people in Edison that sell tires. I mean, if I was on the Chamber of Commerce, I'd be advocating for businesses in Edison to get.
And we do, and they have been on the state contract. And so we used to buy them off the state contract through F&S Tire all the time,
Okay.
which they were, and then they were on the co-op, they dropped off the co-op. So we did bid it. What happens with that is we bid it, and then we go and check the prices of the co-op, and they're always cheaper on the co-op because they have higher buying power.
Understand.
Off the co-op.
Thank you. That's it, Council President.
Thank you. Any other council members, A, B, C, and D? Hearing none, moving to the Department of Recreation, letter A. Question or comments from council members? Hearing none, moving to 13 from the Chief of Police, A, B, and C. Any questions or comments from council members? Hearing none from the Township Clerk, letter A. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, moving to the council member of the Planning Board, Councilman John Pointer.
Thank you, Council President. The next meeting is on Monday, the 17th, 7 p.m. here in council chambers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember John Pointer. Discussion items. Let's start from our left, Councilman John Pointer. Any discussion items?
None at this time.
Councilmember Ajay Patil.
None at this time.
Councilmember Patel.
None at this time.
Councilmember Richard Brescher.
Just some questions. And I didn't bring this one up because I seen Hank here today. But I'm wondering if I can get an update, and you don't have to give this to me today. but it was an old thing, the Camelot. A resolution, an update, whether we are resolving it, they're complying, or, where we are with that.
The letters that I prepared for the inspection at Camelot have been forwarded over to the engineer that's really responsible for it now, because I guess when Colliers left, they left it for the new engineer. We've discussed it. The back portion of the property is in compliance. I'm not sure if the other parts have been planted, but this would be the time they should plant it. And we haven't signed off on it, so they're still on the hook for it also.
Okay. And then I sent a email to the business administrator, but I guess she's out. That's how we have Laura here. But then I sent it to Pat Coyle to see if he can get a follow-up. I'm looking for information on road paving. I gave them a list of roads that PSE&G cut open the road. They made the repair. They patched that little strip, but they never paved the whole road or half the road, or they never did anything. And they finished that work, I believe, in November. So I was looking for an answer to see whether it is finished, it's not finished. They're not going to ever pave it. They're going to pave it in the winter because winter's coming. I'm just looking for some kind of answers.
I will forward that question to them. I don't have an answer for you, but I will let them know.
Who would look into that? Like whose job is the making sure that PSE&G, is that engineering?
Well, they get permits, obviously, for that. So I can't answer that for, who does that. They have to get the permits for the road opening permit, and then they have to repave it. So I would assume that it's engineering that has to give back, we have to give them back their money, they have to get a permit, and then you have to ensure that it's done. And to be honest with you, I don't know whether that's engineering who does that, but I will find out for you.
Okay, when Hank comes back, could you
Yeah, I
check with
can,
him?
I'll just ask him.
Yes, thank you.
If he's the
Those
one
are
who
my
does
only
it.
questions, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brescher. Councilmember Margot Harris.
None, sir.
Council Vice President Joyce Ship Freeman.
Thank you. My first question, I thought I seen Captain Massey in here. My first question, if people are having different traffic problems in front of their home about parking and not knowing what's issued or not, who do I send the complaint to? Because I have nothing to do with the traffic division of police. So who would be in charge of traffic? Because I thought that would be people parking in front of their house or people blocking driveways.
Council, sorry, Council Vice President, and I don't mean to strike down your moment, but the captain's not here for any
No. I just
questions
want,
today.
I'm not asking him
For
a
the
question. I'm just
appeal.
asking him a basic question, like who do I send the information
Okay.
to? I'm not grilling him or anything. I just want to know because somebody asked me. So I just want to know the traffic division. Do I send stuff to the traffic division? How do I forward it to you?
I would email it to Sergeant Semino, Lisa Semino.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Mr. Council
Now,
President?
And just real quick,
Let me,
I just want to understand the roles of everyone who's here today, because we're not going to, of course, we're asking great questions, but what is your role here today? Are you part of the appeal, or you're here for our meeting?
No, I'm here for your meeting. I have nothing to do with the appeal.
Okay,
That's on
Oh,
the
great.
record, and that's not part of it.
we can invite you more
Well, they
often. I
just
can
had
find-
asked,
I can find a list of questions
They
to
just
ask.
asked him to come because there was so much on here
Hey,
that was
just-
from engineering.
No,
Secondly-
we appreciate that. You do have a life, I don't want to mention your age, but it works out perfect.
Council President?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I have an answer to Councilman Brescher's question about the survey.
Okay, great.
I
Please.
guess when it was laid out, the survey that were done is that the town owns the cemetery, but the church owns the Swales Park portion. And what we want to do is survey it so we can do phase 2 of the Swales Park improvement, give the church the cemetery, and then take the property from them and then build the volleyball court. And that's basically why we're doing the survey, so we can have a legal swap and they can do a legal description and the whole thing when they do the transfer.
Is there an agreement with the church?
I believe it's all in place, yes, sir.
Okay.
All right.
Could I get a copy of the agreement?
Well, it'll
Through
come
legal?
from administration.
Legal would have to know about this, no?
You know what, I'm sorry.
Well, if we're going to swap land with the church, we wouldn't do it without you, right?
Well, yes, there need to, yes, that would have to come back. If there was some sort of purchase or sale agreement or any kind of land acquisition or sale, that would require council approval.
Councilman, if you're looking for the agreement, we'll have that sent to you tomorrow.
But there is no agreement.
If there's an agreement.
There's no agreement.
That I'm aware of as I sit here this evening, but that would require council approval, correct?
Okay, so,
We need the property as a township to finish the second portion of the park, this Wells Park, and that's the volleyball courts. So the vacant land is owned right now by the church, and the cemetery is owned by the town, and that's backward. So hopefully we're correcting a situation that's been there for years and years and years.
Now,
Okay.
if I may finish.
right, so what you're telling me is that the church owns the volleyball court, and we own the cemetery.
The church owns the land where we want to put the volleyball court, and we own the cemetery. And they want the cemetery, and we want the land. So we're going to swap.
Okay, well, that's a new one for me. Being that the attorney, no one knew. Yeah, if I can just get some kind of report on this afterward. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Councilmember Brescher.
Council,
Go ahead. Did you?
Council Vice President, I think our Council President, Council Vice President was asking something and she left.
I
in the
just
middle.
asked one question, and I cut me off, and, I
Council-
can't even finish what I'm
I'm sorry,
saying
just-
at all. What I would like to do is I'd like to give kudos to the Kiwanis Club for doing the great things that they do within our community. I had a chance to go to their induction of the Action Club of Edison, and when they received their charter. And for me, going to that, I understood that our former mayor made sure that the children that suffer with different disabilities for the shelter workshop, he made sure that they had a place that they can go during the course of the day. So at any time whatsoever, I would like us to present the Kiwanis Club with a proclamation or something for all their great work in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Is there anything else? Any of the members of the council have anything else for discussion items? Hearing none, I have no comments. We are going to go into a brief recess. We made a commitment to have a 7 o'clock appeal, so I'm just going to ask for a motion for a recess until 7 o'clock.
Motion to recess?
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're in recess. Good evening, everyone. This is the appeal for the Charlie Browns for today at 7 PM, October 12th. Can I have a motion to reopen our meeting?
Motion to reopen the meeting?
A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carries. We're going to be passing, well, I'm going to be passing my president powers to our attorney here to run the meeting just for the appeal.
Okay. Thank you, Council President.
You can have this gavel.
Oh, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, members of council. Tonight, we are here convened to hear the appeal of the variances granted to Markham Developers LLC, case number Z13-2021, to determine whether or not the zoning board had an appropriate and valid use of its authority under the municipal land use law. The ground rules for tonight are as follows. There will be 15 minutes for the appellant to make a presentation with regard to their appeal, after which there will be 15 minutes from the applicant to respond to that appeal. And after that period, both of those periods will be timed. After that period, there will be a 30-minute period for counsel to ask questions of either the appellant or the applicant. I ask that council members in their questions seek only questions to clarify what has been presented on appeal. We cannot entertain any new facts this evening, and our review is purely of the record that was presented at the zoning board. After which there may be a motion from any council member as to how to vote on this specific appeal. There will be no public comment with regard to this appeal. There will be public comment later on in the meeting. So at this time, we will call forward the appellant in this matter.
Actually, Mr. Moncello, this is Stephen Tripp on behalf of the applicant, Markham. Who
Yes,
is
Mr. Tripp.
Before we start, and I advised Mr. Raynone of this, I wanted to put a concern regarding potential conflicts on the record.
I will allow you to do so. I ask that you do, can you do so in under a minute?
I can do so very briefly.
Okay. If we could, well, you know, we'll set the timer at 2 minutes. If we
Okay.
could. Thank you, Marlene. Okay.
We received a letter that Mr. Bassoff sent regarding a conflict of another council member. We have no position on that. I'm purely addressing the potential conflict for 3 of the sitting council members who, at various points in the application process, expressed opposition to Markham's application. Councilman Brescher appeared at a meeting, the first hearing, and expressed opposition. Councilman Harris participated in the Facebook page of the objectors, also attended a rally, was photographed with signs opposing the application, and Councilman Patel was also in the local paper for attending a rally in opposition. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding. There doesn't have to be an actual conflict or any showing of actual prejudgment. It's whether there's an appearance created that could affect, the perception that it's an impartial hearing. And we think that these issues are important enough to put on the record before the proceeding commences, before the appeal goes forward, just so that if there's future legal proceedings, it's on the record and our concerns are preserved.
Thank you, and it'll be noted for the record.
Thank you.
Okay.
Council President or Attorney, before we start,
Yes.
I don't know, is the pronunciation issue, is the Councilman Patel or Patil?
Patel.
He said Patel.
No, but which one? Patel or Patel?
Patil, P-A-T-I-L.
Okay, that's a Patil, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. You've noted your representations regarding conflict on the record. And at this point, we will begin with the appellant. Mr. Bassoff, you have 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm Joel Bassoff, 17 Beach Lane in Edison. And in the interest of full disclosure, that's a single-family home. But before that, I lived in a townhouse. I liked it, so I'm not against townhouses as long as they're in the right place. But before I go into the details of the appeal, I'd like to offer expressions of gratitude. I'm grateful that people want to invest in Edison. That's a good thing. And if we apply our zoning laws properly, Edison will continue to be a town that people want to invest in and to live in. I'm grateful that we have residents who volunteer to serve on public bodies like the zoning board. We might not agree with all of their decisions, but we're grateful that they serve. And because developers and zoning board members are human, they sometimes make mistakes. And so I'm grateful that we have this opportunity to get together tonight to correct a mistake. And what's the mistake? A variance that would allow a developer to build 14 units of attached multiple-family housing on the site of the Charlie Brown restaurant, a 2-acre property that's next to single-family homes, and that's on a street of single-family homes, and that's next to the Metuchen Golf and Country Club, which is surrounded by single-family homes. If we let this go through, it will be the first and only development of attached multiple-family dwellings within at least a half-mile radius. The first and only multiple-family development on the perimeter of the golf course, and the first and only multiple-family development on Plainfield Road. Now, under the municipal land use law, for a developer to get a use variance, the type of variance that we're dealing with here, the developer has to prove that the property is, quote, particularly suitable for the proposed use. If the developer doesn't prove particular suitability, then under the law, the variance has to be reversed. So, we have property that's next to single-family homes, on a street lined with single-family homes, and next to a golf course surrounded by single-family homes. Logic and common sense tell you that the property is particularly suitable for single-family homes. However, the developer hired an expert to testify that the Charlie Brown property is particularly suitable for attached multifamily development because it's next to single-family homes, because it's on, quote, an arterial roadway, and because it's next to the golf course. So you have to ask, how is it that being next to single-family homes, being on a, quote, arterial roadway, or being next to a golf course makes the property particularly suitable for multiple family development rather than single family? The expert never explains that. The expert's conclusion flies in the face of common sense. Now, if an expert gives an opinion that defies logic, the expert has to give an explanation. That's the law. And the expert in this case didn't give any reasons for his conclusions. No studies, no treatises, no scholarly articles, no research, just an unsupported, unexplained conclusion. And the New Jersey courts reject expert opinions that are unsupported. For example, the Supreme Court said, an expert's bare opinion that has no support in factual evidence or similar data is a net opinion which is not admissible and may not be considered. So under the law, we have to disregard the expert's opinion. So this is actually an easy matter to decide because what common sense tells you to do is the same as what the law tells you to do. And here's what the law says. The municipal land use law says that an applicant for a use variance has to prove that the variance, quote, will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. The zone plan means the master plan. So one purpose of the master plan is to, quote, encourage well-designed, anti-sprawl land development that is consistent with established neighborhoods and land use patterns. Do established neighborhoods around the golf course include multiple family attached housing? No. The established land use pattern is single-family homes. In case you're wondering, does it matter whether it's single-family detached houses or multiple-family attached construction? The answer is yes. Under Edison's zoning ordinance, it matters. The Edison zoning code defines 4 different types of housing. Quote, dwelling units shall be differentiated one from the other as follows. A, single family, B, townhouse, C, 2-family, and D, multifamily. Under the zoning code, you don't lump single-family homes and townhouses together. If you mix them up, you don't have a neighborhood anymore. You have just a random mishmash. And a mishmash is exactly what zoning is designed to prevent. Under the zoning code, each different type of dwelling belongs in its own zoning district. It's common sense, and it's the law. So under the zoning code, a townhouse structure can have from 2 to 8 units, so the developer's duplex project falls under the definition of townhouse. The zoning code has a comprehensive set of regulations for townhouse developments. The code requires that a townhouse development be on at least 25 acres. The Charlie Brown property is only 2 acres, so on that basis alone, it's impossible for the property to be particularly suitable for townhouse use. The code requires a setback of at least 50 feet from county roads. The proposed townhouses here have a setback of less than 36 feet. The code requires at least 35 feet between townhouse structures. The proposed structures here are less than 10.5 feet apart. The developer's plan doesn't even come close to what Edison requires for townhouse developments. The developer is trying to stuff 14 pounds of potatoes into a 2-pound sack, and the result is a mess. Let's briefly address the issue of the proposed age restriction. The townhouses are supposed to be restricted to buyers who are 55 or older. How does the more advanced age of the buyer transform the site into a property that's particularly suitable for townhouse use? The developer's expert never explains that. It's the same townhouse structure whether the buyer is 35 years old or 55 years old. Buyers who are over 55 will not magically transform these units into single-family homes. The master plan tells us where to develop housing for older residents, and it's not the 2-acre Charlie Brown site. It's locations where you have shopping, services, and transit that older people can walk to. We don't even know if there's currently a demand for more age-restricted housing in Edison at this time. The developer's expert admitted that he never performed a market analysis. He just made an assumption, and an assumption without data to back it up is inadmissible. So, if you reverse the variance, what's next? Well, the developer can lease or sell the property for restaurant use. A pre-existing use doesn't require a variance. Or the developer can apply to the council for rezoning. We all agree that golf course zoning is inappropriate. The New Jersey Superior Court said that the remedy for inappropriate zoning is legislative or judicial action. Legislative action means that the zoning would be evaluated by the planning board, there would be public comment, and the council could amend the zoning map. Or the developer could apply for a variance for single-family homes, which would fit in with the existing neighborhood. So what are the consequences if the variance is allowed to stand? We'll end up with a hodgepodge of incompatible housing types, and that will be the end of an established neighborhood. It will open up a Pandora's box for more development jumble. For the first time, we'll have multifamily attached housing in the Oak Hills neighborhood, on Plainfield Road, and on the perimeter of the golf course. You see, turning the Charlie Brown property into a development mishmash will create facts on the ground that developers will use to justify inappropriate development elsewhere in the area. How do we know this? Because that's what the developer tried to do in this case. The developer's expert claims that it's okay to build attached housing on the Charlie Brown site next to single-family homes because elsewhere in Edison, you have townhouse developments next to single-family homes. He didn't say that those developments represent good, enlightened planning, only that they exist. What's more, you'll have a precedent for multifamily attached housing inside the golf course zone. Now, no one's planning for the golf course to go out of business anytime soon, but then again, no one expected that the time would come when there would no longer be a restaurant at 222 Plainfield Road. So we all know that the developer's plan for the Charlie Brown site is inappropriate. Even the developer and his team know that. At the zoning board hearing, the developer's attorney said, "We tried to create the look and feel of a single-family development." Mr. Roshansky testified, "Our goal is to have the new plan be a good fit with the existing neighborhood." So tonight, let's give the developer an opportunity to realize his own stated goal, something that has the look and feel of single-family homes, because they are single-family homes, something that's a good fit with the neighborhood. Then, when families move into their new single-family homes, we can welcome them and say, "Hi, neighbors, welcome to the neighborhood." So I'll be glad to answer your questions. I appreciate your attention. I hope you'll follow common sense and the law, and thank you for considering this appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Basso. Okay. Mr. Tripp, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you. So I think before we get into the facts, it's important to really recognize what this case is and what this case isn't. How it came to be here before the council and the nature of the proceedings before the zoning board. In his submission and in his statement, Mr. Bassoff tries to create the impression that the zoning board somehow acted rashly, acted in a conclusory manner, didn't do what was based on evidence or facts, and nothing could be farther from the truth. This wasn't a rush to judgment. It wasn't a quick hearing. It wasn't a rubber stamp on an applicant's proposed development that sometimes occurs. In fact, if you look at what happened, it's quite the opposite. The record showed, and it shows if you read the transcript and you read the resolution, that the board tried very hard to get it right. There were 3 long hearings. If you look, June 29th, the hearing started just before 8 o'clock and went to nearly midnight. There's 216 pages of transcript. Almost 130 of those pages are the public hearings. On February 15th, it was a 5-hour-plus hearing, 256 pages of transcript. Over 150 pages were devoted to the public comment. On June 28th, it was again over 4 hours, 212 transcript pages, over 130 devoted to the public portion. The application evolved over time. It started with 23 3-story townhouses in buildings that were that were 3 stories and up to 140 feet in length, with no age restriction. It ended up, at the final hearing, 16 2-bedroom age-restricted units and 8 duplex buildings, and that was what was presented to the board. Now, the age restriction clearly has an impact on the intensity because, as there was unrebutted testimony from the traffic engineer, that it's a very low traffic generating use, and the population density of 2-bedroom age-restricted units is equivalent to 6 or 8 single families. So the overall impact would not be greater, but it provided an opportunity for a type of housing that is in short supply, and I think the board recognized that after hearing the testimony. But that wasn't even enough, because after presenting all of that, the board pushed the applicant further and said, you know what, we want to reduce it and take 1 more unit out and get it to 14. Why? Because we want you to eliminate the 1 building that's closest to the rear yards of the single-family homes on Edgewood, so there'll be no building in that part of the site whatsoever. The applicant agreed to that, and the board imposed that as a condition. After that, the board voted unanimously to approve. The interesting part in his submission is the appellant claims that that somehow shows the board acted arbitrarily. We think that shows that the board did its job, because they had a difficult site. You have a property that clearly is zoned into inutility. It's in a golf course zone. It's 2 acres. And the only permitted use is a golf course on 100 acres. So there's nothing you could do with that site without a use variance. This isn't a case where there were a myriad of permitted uses that were allowed, that the zoning board could say to the applicant, gee, why don't you do this? Or why can't you do that? Or why is it uniquely suited? we have a site that you can't do anything with without a use variance. So in terms of particular site suitability, there's extensive testimony and extensive findings in the resolution that the site was particularly suited for a number of reasons. The first was that it was zoned into inutility. The second were locational and physical characteristics of the site. It's on an arterial roadway. There's country club facilities and a golf course on the two other sides. And the only single family that abut the site are 2 or 3 homes on Edge that back up on Edgewood. So it's not in the middle of a single family residential neighborhood. It's on a major road, and there was testimony to that effect. And there was also testimony on the benefits of age-restricted units. And contrary to Mr. Bassoff's statement, there were demographic information given by the applicant's expert that 28% of the population of Edison is now seniors. And the master plan talks about providing senior housing. And there was substantial testimony on the compatibility of age-restricted units. And there was even testimony and findings in the resolution that the proposed 2-bedroom age-restricted units in these smaller scale buildings would have less of an impact and was more compatible than a single-family development where you would have the houses backing up to the golf course and backing up to Plainfield Road. There was ample testimony. Mr. Bassoff's statement that everything was done in a conclusory manner really is belied by the resolution. I don't know if the council had a chance to look at it, but it's a 25-page resolution with detailed findings and statements of what the evidence was in the record. And then if you look at the 600 or 700 pages of transcripts, you will find evidence to support everything in that resolution. As to the negative criteria, there's ample demonstration that there was no substantial detriment to the public good because, again, the traffic generated is minimal and the population density was minimal and the units were scaled in a way that would not impact the neighborhood. It would be a small self-contained development. In terms of the issue of proximity to shopping or transit, any grouping of single-family houses, any residential use would have that same issue. And in this particular instance, we came up with a development that provides an opportunity for seniors and yet has none of the impacts that one would associate with a large-scale multifamily development, basically because this is not a large-scale multifamily development. It's a very small infill development, and the units are duplexes. And at the end of the hearing, the zoning officer, Mr. Ayat, was asked about it, and he said essentially duplexes are 2 single families that are side by side. They're not considered townhouses under the state code. The ordinance in Edison may not have a specific definition of duplexes, but to call these townhouses and to say that the townhouse regulations that are clearly designed for well over 100 units on 25 acres with large-scale buildings, this is not what this development was, and it's disingenuous to claim to the contrary. The only argument that I really heard is that the appellant believes that single-family houses would be better, and that's his opinion. He's not an expert. There was ample testimony from the expert that what was proposed made sense, it fit in, it was particularly suited, and it would have minimal impact at best. To look at some of the arguments, the precedent argument that this is suddenly going to open the floodgates, that's just wrong as a matter of law. There's ample case law. A zoning variance is specific. The statute even says so. It's for a specific piece of property, and particularly the case here, where there's such a unique situation. How many instances in the town of Edison do you have a 2-acre site that's part of a zone that only allows a 100-acre golf course, and that's bordered by an arterial road, country club facilities, a golf course, and a handful of backyards. It's very unique, and anyone who tried to argue that this establishes any precedent would, quite frankly, be laughed at at town hall, because it establishes no precedent whatsoever. In terms of the applicants, the board's reference to the applicant's willingness to respond to the board's comments, I know Mr. Bassoff in his written submission claimed that that's somehow evidence of arbitrariness. Again, it's evidence that the board worked to come up with a solution for a difficult site and to find something that worked for the benefit of the municipality. In terms of the conclusory testimony, if you read the transcript, there's plenty of reasons and evidence that the applicant's planner gave, and it's all recited in the resolution. And in fact, in Mr. Bassoff's submission, he puts the conclusion in and says, that's it, nothing more. But if you go to the transcript, it's usually preceded by multiple paragraphs of an explanation as to how he reached his conclusion. So that's disingenuous as well. In terms of the master plan actually calls for commercial, because as the planner indicated, the site was a restaurant for many years, and it was just sort of left alone, and no decision was made as to rezone it for commercial, because it was just sort of left by itself. Now the circumstances have changed. The restaurant's out of business. We have to come up with something that makes sense for this site. And we believe that if you read the resolution and then you look at the transcript references that support it, that this is really an optimal development that's approved for the site. The argument that the council somehow took away the legislative authority, equally without merit, because again, we're talking about a 2-acre piece. You have to look at the zone as a whole. It's over 100 acres, the zone. This is a tiny part of the zone, the golf course zone, and it's an infinitesimal part of the township, and 14 units of 2 bedrooms. The total number of bedroom units is small, and it certainly doesn't have the capability of having the impact on the zone that would rise to the level of taking away the governing body's authority. So at the end of the day, I think the resolution speaks for itself. The case law talks about when you look at a particular site suitability case, you look at what the board expressed, what their reasons were, and what's in the record. And if you look at that carefully, the only conclusion that you can reach is that the zoning board acted correctly.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. And I'd like to thank both gentlemen for their presentations this evening. At this point, there will be an opportunity for council members to ask questions of either the appellant or the applicant if they require any clarification on the arguments made this evening. Once again, I ask council members to not elicit or ask questions which would elicit responses that could provide new testimony that was not part of the record. So to that, if there are any council members who wish to ask questions, please just advise whether you want to ask a question of the appellant or the applicant, and they will make themselves available. Thank you.
David, could I ask a question?
Sure. Absolutely.
For the applicant, I'm teetering on getting laughed at Edison, but when we talked about no other property being suited, just off the top of my head, on Grove Avenue, I believe that there's a couple acres of property that are on an arterial roadway that adjoin houses and the golf course. It seems to have the exact same criteria, except now it's golf course and it's used by the golf course. If that were subdivided off, wouldn't that fit the same criteria that you have?
Not necessarily. I don't know the property, but every property is looked at separately. I don't know what the zoning of that property is. I don't know what the locational characteristics are. I don't know what surrounds it. Everything is very specific to the unique circumstances of the case.
Right, I think.
And again, without knowing all of the particulars, I don't think anybody could rely on this particular variance because it's very specific. That's always been a rule. Whenever an applicant comes before the board and even tries to argue that there's precedent for this, or you gave a variance to somebody else, they get thrown out. And if you ever try to argue to a judge, well, wait, the zoning board denied my application, but it approved 4 others, the judge says, we're not litigating those 4 others, we're litigating your case. And that's really how the law is. So I don't think that in any circumstances, this is going to open the floodgates to anything. I think it's an argument that the objectors are making, quite frankly, because they don't have very many other arguments.
Well, I mean, the property I'm aware of, and it seems to me as to being the exact same criteria. You don't know, so I get it. Next question, I guess. Next question was, oh, yes. We heard, when I read expert testimony, and I heard that single-family homes, there wasn't a positive vibe for that. You didn't have positive criteria for that because multifamily homes did. My question is, when we do this, we're creating like a spot zone now in the township, and the township of Edison has many areas where we might have 2 warehouses and then all single-family homes. Their reason why it wouldn't be suitable for single-family homes, because it's on an arterial roadway. I live on an arterial roadway, and I'll be honest with you, I love where I live, and I have a single-family home. I don't have a golf course behind me, but I have woods, which is kind of similar to a golf course or open space. So that's an opinion. So in their decision, it seems like their opinion was that single-family homes wouldn't be as beneficial, right? Because when I looked at it, I live in my home, and I'm very happy with my home, and I have that same criteria.
I think but the zoning board looked at this particular property, the fact that it abuts the recreational facilities, the golf course, and doesn't really abut only the rear yards of a couple of homes, and by eliminating the building, they took away that impact. It's on a busy road. There was testimony that historically there are homes built on arterial roads, usually on a historic basis, older homes, typically, and that it's not a good idea for infill, particularly with a shallow property like this, where you can't get as much of a separation. And the other thing is to look at is and I give them credit, the objectors and the appellant have tried to create this impression that this is some large-scale townhouse development plopped in the middle of, surrounded by single-family homes. It's not. It's not large-scale. The units, the testimony was that the buildings are about 40-some-odd feet wide. There was the zoning officer again explained that these are essentially 2 single-family side-by-sides. So the attempt to characterize this as a large-scale development that's going to somehow open the floodgates, I think, is just wrong. And if you look at the record, it's not what the record shows.
So the only difference, if each unit is, what were each of the units? I forgot the square footage. 2,000
They're in
square
the
feet.
2,000 range, but they're 2 bedrooms, limited to 2 bedrooms by an agreed deed restriction. And that's not a dense development. That's not a high population generator, and it's not a high traffic generator. But it provides an opportunity for a unit, a housing type that's not found in any great supply. And it gives you an opportunity to provide for something like that on a very, very small scale.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we may not agree, but I think if you look at the record, that's what the record shows.
Any other questions from
Yes.
Councilman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Harris.
Mr. Tripp, looking at the special reasons and satisfaction of positive criteria, I'm struck by the part that says, because the site must be uniquely suited for the use, one of the prerequisites for this determination is showing that other locations in the surrounding area are not as suitable for the use. And so when we talk about what area are we talking about? The 32 square miles of Edison, that area? Are we talking about North Edison in the area of Charlie Brown's? What are we talking about?
No, actually, what the case law says is you don't look at whether there are other sites. You don't look at whether it has to be located here. You look at whether it's an inquiry into whether the property is particularly suited in the sense that it's well suited for the use in spite of the fact that it's not permitted. That's the standard. You don't have to show that there's no other potential location. You don't have to show that the project must be built at this location. The Supreme Court has said that clearly. It's you look at the particular site and make a determination as to whether all the factors and circumstances particular and peculiar to this site, and it doesn't have to be unique, it has to be particular. In fact, that case, the Price v. Himeji case I cite, specifically said it doesn't have to be unique, it has to be particularly suited. The argument in that case was that it needed to be unique, and the court said that's not a requirement.
Counselor, I'm confused then, because here in this memo that Lou Raynon had sent, it states in here that one of the prerequisites is showing that other locations in the surrounding area are not as suitable for the use. So am I missing something in this?
I think that you're hearing argument from Mr. Tripp. Obviously, you have been advised by counsel as to the criteria. He may have a different, he's presenting his argument on his behalf. And I think, and in doing so, certainly he's made the best case he can for his client. But I would recommend that you be guided by the legal advice that you have received.
Okay. I remain confused. The other question, I don't know if this was on the record previously, and so let me know if it wasn't. What would, and that is, what would happen if someone who owns one of the units decides that they're going to use it as a rental property? What happens then, and what happens to the age restrictions? Let's say the renter decides that they don't need to abide by that, and they rent to people who have, have kids under the age of 19.
Well, there's deed restriction. There's going to be a HOA. There's going to be a master deed and bylaws, which will be enforceable. It's enforceable against owners. It's enforceable against rentals. You can't, by renting it, you can't evade the restrictions. The restrictions are totally enforceable, and they will be deed restrictions that will be recorded. So it matters not if the unit was rented or occupied by an owner. It would have to abide by the age restrictions. It would be enforceable in the first instance by the association, and that's what associations do. It would be no different if there were single-family homes that had an age restriction and there was a homeowners association. It's no different than when you have, in Edison, you have subdivisions where there's an HOA to maintain the drainage structures because they're private. If somebody doesn't maintain it, it can be enforced. So they can be legally enforced, and it wouldn't matter whether it's rented or not.
Okay, thank you. That's it for now.
David?
I want, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
You go first, I'll go next.
All right, the question I had was, I'm not sure if it was discussed in the record, but were other commercial properties considered?
No, there were no other properties considered. This application was for this particular property.
Was there any market study done for age-restricted properties?
There was no market study, but the planner indicated that there were, he looked in Edison and found that the predominant were rentals and that there were very few age-restricted ownership units available, and nobody contradicted that. And I think he mentioned one or two developments that he had identified. But basically, what he relied on was the changing demographics, the fact that the population in Edison is aging, and the fact that the master plan refers to the need for senior housing, and the fact that there was, in his survey of Edison, very few for ownership homes of this type, that there were some rental units, but there was an absence of this type of housing product.
Okay. Going through the special reasons I was provided, your argument is that it should be the third point, which it says where use serves general welfare, proposed site is particularly suited for proposed use. My question is, how is it, how is the proposed site suitable if the surrounding properties are RA and RBB, which are just single-family homes? So you're saying the only reason it's suitable is because the professional stated that there is there's might be a need for age restricted?
No, the issue on what surrounds it is also something that I want to clarify. This is not a situation where if you look at the property, it's surrounded by single-family homes. If you look at the property, you see the Metuchen Country Club, pool and the recreational facilities in the clubhouse. You see a golf course. You see an arterial road, which does have single-family homes that are historic. They're older homes that have been there. And then you have the backyards of a couple of houses. So it's not a situation where it is something that's entirely surrounded by single-family. It's in a golf course zone, and it has different uses, and I think the planner pointed that out. If this was a development where somebody purchased 2 acres in the middle of a single-family development, there'd be no basis for the variance. It's based on the unique circumstances of this case. You have a 2-acre property that can't be used for any purpose without a use variance, that is not surrounded by single-family homes. It's surrounded by a mix of uses, and that was the testimony. And if you look at the zoning map and you look at the aerial maps that were exhibits, you can see that.
I agree, there is a need for a variance if you don't want to go commercial. But you didn't do any other, you didn't present any other commercial properties consideration. You don't have a market study for
Well,
these.
the commercial properties, when you apply for a variance, you don't have to show that there's no other place to put it. What you have to show is particular suitability here. And I think the particular suitability, to me, is based on the fact that these are small-scale, 2-bedroom, age-restricted units that will have a minimal impact, and that's why there's a particular suitability here. The age restriction it does create a less intensity. There's no question about it. That's a given, and no one can really dispute that because the traffic studies show there's less intensity, and when you have age restricted with 2 bedrooms, with a deed restriction that limits it to 2 bedrooms, you're controlling the population in a significantly more restrictive way than if you had 6 or 8 single-family houses that had 4 or 5 bedrooms each. There's no question there would be more traffic, more population, and more impact. And that was put on the record, and nobody disputed that.
Okay, thank you.
Council Vice President.
I'd like to ask the other gentleman. I'd like to ask you to give me a better explanation of where single homes would be there and how many single homes would be suited for that location.
Well, there was testimony from a professional planner, a Mr. Peter Steck, who was retained by several opponents, and he came up with a graphic, a rendering of what the property would look like with a cul-de-sac with 6 single-family homes, and it would be similar to what already exists up and down the entire length of Plainfield Road.
All right, so with that, without an age restriction on that, I can depend on about 30 children or more coming out of the buildings?
There was no testimony that there'd be that many children. I'm not sure. But Mr. Tripp pointed out that even single-family homes could have a homeowners association and a deed restriction. So there's no reason to believe necessarily that a variance would be approved for a single-family development that would result in children.
All right, and so, last one, if it did not come about, if this went to the next level, and it was appealed and it came back as some people wanted to go back to commercial use or that information, would that, how would we benefit from it, not having to stick in homes?
Restaurant use is the historical use. And a number of residents of the area testified that they would love to see a restaurant revived on that site. Even the vice president of the zoning board said that the restaurant was a dream, and he recalled how he would walk there with his family, and it would be a wonderful neighborhood focal point if that was to be restored.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Patil.
Thank you. Sir, if you can please stay there.
Mr. Bassoff, I think you're up again. Yeah.
I just heard from my council colleagues, and I will have a few questions for you as well as few questions for the applicant. It's a nice neighborhood surrounded by the single family houses around there. It's a narrow Plainfield Road. School is very close by. We know the traffic situation there. Given all the circumstances, I heard even from council vice president, single family was one of the option. Again, you kind of characterize that would have been consistent with the neighborhood. Again, if I look from that lens of a single family, 4 or 5 single family houses with 4 bedroom, probably we're looking at even 5 houses, 4 bedrooms, 20 bedrooms, right? And potentially the kids. Again, I'm not going back and forth with the question. I'm just giving my the thought process here. Again, that was something could have acceptable to the neighborhood. That kind of surprises me. But my question to you is, knowing the proposal here, 2 bedroom, again, I'm going to ask those questions because I don't know the square footage of each unit, the age restricted, 3 long hearings. And I know the reason there were 3 long hearings, the first proposal that came in from the applicant was not acceptable to the neighborhood. And that's what, there were 100+ pages of the records there. It continued to happen 3 times. Again, I'm kind of lost in the whole, because it's a big packet here, hundreds and thousands of pages to go through and really understand what got changed from non-age restricted condo or the townhouses to all the way to the age restricted, the smaller footprint, and still there are concerns from the neighbors. So if you can explain me, again, what's the narrative there?
Yes. So the original proposal for which there was a hearing in June of 2021 was for 4 buildings, townhouse style, with a total of 23 units with no age restriction. And there was concern that there'd be safety implications. I think not so much because of the school, although that's a concern, but because in a townhouse environment, you don't have any recreational facilities, you wouldn't have the sidewalks, you don't have the backyards, you couldn't have a backyard swing set. Then the applicant came back with the same 4 buildings, 23 units, and added the age restriction because I think there is a concern that Edison just doesn't want more school children. And then the project morphed again, expanding from the 4 buildings to 8 buildings with a total of 16 units, again with the age restriction, and then reduced to 7 buildings with the 14 units. One thing that I think is worth pointing out, though, in terms of the age restriction, that's not necessarily permanent. There was a situation, and this is reflected in legislation of the New Jersey legislature. In around 2008, New Jersey experienced a glut of age-restricted housing. Developers were not able to sell it, so the legislature passed a law in 2009 allowing the age restrictions to be removed. Now, in this case, as you heard, the developer's planning expert did not do any market analysis. The only statistic that we heard was that Edison's over 55 population has increased to 28%, but that doesn't mean that the demand for age-restricted housing has increased. So we don't know. We could very well find ourselves with a glut of age-restricted housing again, and then younger families could move into these units. I doubt that they would be allowed to just be left vacant.
So what, if I hear correctly, or if I heard your sentiment correctly, first thing that there is no moratorium saying 40 years you cannot convert those to a regular unit. So again, I have not seen that anywhere, but again, I'll be asking that question to the applicant. The second thing is you are afraid if this goes through, it's a potentially will get converted to a regular housing or regular condominium or townhouses.
Well, I'm saying it couldn't be ruled out.
Okay.
And I should add also, as Mr. Tripp pointed out, a homeowners association would be responsible for policing the occupancy. And how do we know how diligent a homeowners association would be in doing that?
Okay.
There's no, we haven't heard of any potential for municipal police power on this. This would just be the people that live there having to, I don't know, spy on their neighbors, report their neighbors, sue their neighbors.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And I have a few questions for the applicant as well.
If I may.
Absolutely.
A couple of questions, and maybe I'm anticipating your questions, but a couple of things. On the enforcement issue, if the homeowners association.
Mr. Tripp, I'm sorry. I'd like you to respond to the question directly.
sure.
If we could, allow the councilman to ask his question, you can have a chance to
Sure.
respond.
Sure. In your application, do you have any kind of a clause, the moratorium saying you won't be converting this to a regular housing for like 25 years, 40 years, 50 years or anything?
Yes, we would record a deed restriction that has to be reviewed by the municipality. There would be no, in my opinion, legally, there would be no basis to convert this because the whole issue is you're getting a use variance for a specific project of 14 two-bedroom houses. The deed restriction, once a deed restriction is recorded, you can't, it's not anything the developer could change. Even the board couldn't change it. If we went back to the zoning board, because once there's a deed restriction, you've got to go to court with notice to the public and demonstrate a standard that we could never meet. So in my opinion, legally, I would advise that you could not, once the deed restriction is recorded, and that's going to be a requirement of the approval, it's a requirement of the resolution, these will be deed restricted, essentially in perpetuity. And it's fanciful, really, to suggest that at some point they're going to be able to remove that deed restriction.
Thank you. And I heard that there was not, I would say, the market demand, the study was not done, but in your opinion, expert opinion, do you know the age-restricted housing in Edison has any percentage of vacancy or anything that you are aware?
Aware of what?
Any vacancies or any like market demand? I'm directly asking that question.
We're only aware of the planner testified that there were essentially rental units. So there was nothing that he was aware of in terms of vacant ownership units that anybody was aware of. Nobody presented any evidence of that. And we're only talking about 14 units here. When you talk about gluts, you're talking about a lot of units. We're talking about a very small development. And I think that's the point that somehow gets lost in the argument, is that we're talking about a very small number of units.
I just let everyone know that we've hit the 5-minute mark on remaining in this portion. Yeah.
I have only one last question here is, in terms of the association that was brought in, that you said that it will be maintained by the professional, there will be HOA, there will be a professional company who will be managing that. Any of those details were laid down during the public hearing of this application?
Well, the questions were asked. The board attorney indicated that we would be required to prepare a master deed with restrictions that would have to be reviewed for sufficiency, I guess, by either the board attorney or the municipal attorney. And that would provide for enforcement not only by the HOA, but it would be enforceable by the township if there were any violations.
Okay, so there will be bylaws and everything will be.
Yeah, there will be bylaws that will enforce that, and that's going to be reviewed. We can't just make up our own. We're going to have to submit that get it approved as a condition of the approval.
Thank you. In fact, I wanted to ask, the last question was the square footage of the unit. That's what I was more concerned about. I wrote that in the
I
contract.
believe it was in the range of 2,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
But there was a
Councilman.
specific limitation, an agreement to a deed restriction, that only 2 of the rooms could be used as bedrooms. No further. There was an extra space for either an office or a study, and there would be no closets, there's no bathroom up there, and there would be deed restricted specifically so that it could not be used. And again, that's enforceable not only by the HOA, but it's enforceable as well by the township zoning officer.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Poyer, you waited very patiently. Thank you.
Thank you,
The floor
sir.
is yours. Yeah.
A couple questions for you, Mr. Tripp.
Sure.
These are based on my recollection of the record, so if these were stated, just please advise. And if this is new information, please advise. In the second meeting, affordable housing was brought up in regards to the requirements. With the change to the 14 duplex units, townhouse duplex, however, was there any confirmation as to what that final number may be? Or
No,
if
there
it's
was a
applicable?
termination that, I believe that it's our understanding there'll be a fee paid in lieu of constructing any units, and that's pursuant to your ordinance. But that wasn't specifically addressed. There's a general requirement that we're going to have to comply with the ordinance. My understanding is it will be a fee.
Understood. Was there any determination if the 19-year-old restriction was in fact legal?
Yes, we had research done, and I advised the board attorney that you can increase it to 19. It's lawful. Well, our concern at the meeting was that there's fair housing laws, and we wanted to make sure that that restriction was legal before we affirmatively represented. But I have advised her, and that condition is now it's going to be 19.
Thank you. I couldn't tell because of scaling from the PDF. Do you know what the front setback is from the front of the unit to the roundabout or the parking areas?
That I don't know off the top of my head. I do have a plan.
And if it's okay, just while he gets it, because I know I'm nearing the 5-minute mark on that, could you also provide clarification as to what is meant by transition property? Because that is in the resolution.
You'd have to direct me to where in the resolution. What I'm looking at here is you have a driveway that's got to be, I believe, at least 18 feet long, qualified as a driveway. So the units itself, the garage, the front of the unit's looks like it's set back at least.
Speak at the microphone.
Yeah, it's got to be at least 18 feet. I mean, we could scale it, but if you look at the plan, the width of the driveway, the length of the driveway is the distance between the garage and the internal road to the development.
Thank you. The last question, is there any definition as to what transition property means? I know that the exact location is not known, but
Can you direct me to where in the resolution that's referenced?
I might be mistaken on resolution versus the transcript. I do know that it was either Mr. Komba or one of the other gentlemen that had mentioned when he was giving the conditions and his thoughts on the project that it would be considered a transition area.
That wasn't our testimony, and it wasn't in the resolution. I guess a transition, I can't tell you how it was meant because it wasn't anything that we had put on the record or is in the resolution. There's no finding in the resolution regarding the property as a transitional property.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tripp. Okay, our 30 minutes for questioning has elapsed. We are now at the portion of the meeting where there can be any motion by council. If there is a motion to overturn the decision or to remand the decision, that will require a majority of council to do so. So certainly the council can make a motion and a second. At a point there can be deliberation, which will be done now. And so if there is such a motion, that this would be the opportunity to do so at this time.
Council President, can I ask a question to our attorney? We are done with the question, just
Correct,
from the
yeah.
logistic standpoint of view. There are three options that are presented to this council. My question is, again, I don't know if you want to say that or we just want to move forward. What are the pros and cons of each of those options?
I cannot advise you on the
Okay.
pros and cons of those options. I can only advise you as to what you legally can do at this point in the meeting.
No, I'm not saying voting in a certain direction, but I'm saying is, say, if it goes, say, if this body denies and it goes to will it go to the court? What the consequences of that, or if it gets approved, what happens? Again, I'm just asking the logical process here.
Well, certainly, any action taken by this body tonight can be reviewed by the Superior Court.
Okay.
So that is certainly an option. Either party has that right if they feel aggrieved by this decision. And so that is one option. As I've said before, I hope everyone understands, the options tonight are to either, if you take no action, then in essence, the zoning board decision will hold. It will be, or you can, there can be a motion to overturn the decision of the zoning board, or the third option is that there is a motion to remand this. If you feel that there's a lack of information or testimony or evidence needed for this council to make this appeal, it can be remanded if you so desire. So those are your options legally at this point in the meeting.
Okay, and my last question to you is, the applicant has objected 3 council members. How do you advise as a council?
Our office has reviewed that conflict, and we do not see a conflict. We've advised, I've advised the members who have requested a review of that conflict that we have opined there is no conflict.
Okay,
For
thank
those
you.
members, yes.
Thank you.
I would like to ask if this proceeds, and if they overturn the decision, it will then go to the court, correct?
Procedurally, if either party feels that they are, if they so desire a review of this decision, they can file in the Superior Court, yes.
The reason why I ask these questions is I don't want to spend $100,000, $200,000 and then come back and then.
Well, Counsel, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
Yeah.
basically, your decision tonight should not be based on any threat of litigation. Your decision should purely be based on the record below, and the presentations made tonight with regard to the facts that you, on the record below, and the legal arguments that have been presented. So that should be the basis of your decision this evening.
So
Yeah.
litigation should.
No, it should not be, no, should not be, no, that is procedurally what can happen, but however, that should not play a part in your decision. Yeah.
Are we allowed to deliberate among us, or are we
You
supposed?
certainly, well, if there's a motion and a second, there can certainly be council discussion
Okay.
on that matter. That would be done, just as it would be done in the zoning board, it would be done in open session, that would be done in open session this evening. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a motion that would be made would be to either overturn or to send it back to the zoning board, is that right?
Correct, that's correct.
Okay.
If you take, if either one of those fail, then the zoning board decision will hold, yes, will be upheld. Yeah.
No, go ahead, John.
I just wanted to clarify, so any comments we would like to make would be after a motion.
I would recommend that a motion be made a second, and then we call for discussion on this item. At that point, council members could make any, now, we're past questions now. If you wanted to state your position, that would be the opportunity to do so. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to deny.
Second.
Is that, I'm sorry, just for clarification, that is a motion to overturn the decision of the zoning board.
May I ask a secondary
Yes,
qualification
absolutely.
question?
Yes.
I understand that things are, by the record, very legalese. In this motion, does the exact reasoning have to be provided in the motion, or can I make that during my statement?
You can make, absolutely. Your motion now, an appropriate motion, if you're making a motion to overturn the variances granted by the zoning board, that would be an appropriate motion. We would need a second on that. Then we'd have discussion on that. If there is, in fact, a vote to overturn, we are legally required to memorialize that in writing. My office would certainly do that following this meeting. We would do that, yeah.
Thank you.
So I believe was that your motion,
My
Councilman
motion
Ford?
is to overturn the zoning board decision.
Second.
Okay. At this point, if there are any, this is now the time for discussion. If there are any council comments, you're welcome to do so at this time.
Did you want to start in any order?
Yeah. We can certainly, Councilwoman Harris, if you'd like to begin, that's fine.
Okay. Yes.
Correct.
This, this decision has literally kept me up nights. And I want to point out to Mr. Tripp, by the way, that yes, indeed, I did take part in that protest that was in 2021, and that was protesting specifically the 23 townhomes. I was proud to be in that protest and have no regrets about that. But then I came on council. This was before I was on council, and then I became on council. And with all the changes that have been made, and it makes the protest from the 23 townhomes a moot point. It really does. And I appreciate and respect what the developer has done to bring it down to a more palatable size. At first, when I was deliberating this, I was thinking of this as well. There's my heart, my heart is going one way, my head is going another, because I live on Oak Hills Road. And so my heart is with the residents of Oak Hills Road, but then, I'm thinking, well, I can't really go with my heart. I've got to go with, the facts. And I was leaning, as of up until last night, toward maintaining the zoning board's decision. But then a couple of things happened. We got the memo, very helpful memo from Lou Raynone, our counselor, that really clarified. It was extremely enlightening and helpful. And between that, and then I happened to be at the Chamber of Commerce dinner last night, sitting at a table with Katie Barnes, the widow of Peter Barnes III. And Katie gave me quite an earful last night, talking about Peter's legacy and how this was this whole issue was a passion, something that he fought for, and that resonated with me as well. So when I go through some of the things in Mr. Raynone's memo to us, a couple of things that come out. The satisfying negative criteria, the proposed structure or use compares favorably with the existing uses in the area, that it improves the aesthetic characteristics of the neighborhood, which, I'm sorry, I don't see that. And looking at the renderings, I really wanted to like the renderings. I really wanted to like the design. I don't like the design. I think the design looks cheap. I really do. And that the proposed use would not result in an intensification of currently accepted uses of the zone. Some of the other things that stick out to me, the fact that there's a statement of that minimally fronts the residential uses to the final side. Well, it may minimally front the residential uses to the final side, but those are still three families that are, at least three families who are impacted by this. And I can't just devalue the importance of three families. Fourth, the board took into consideration the surrounding area and determined that the proposed townhomes are more in character with the neighborhood than existing and potential commercial uses for the property. I don't see it. I just don't see it. There was a statement about that the restaurant, about the argument against a restaurant being there, and the argument being that somehow a restaurant would create more traffic. When Charlie Brown's was there, Charlie Brown's was open from lunchtime, which was well after school started, to to whatever time it closed. But 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when school's let out, it's a pretty dead time at the restaurant. So I can't agree that it was impinging more upon the traffic in the area and the school situation. And so taking all of this into consideration, I realize that it doesn't have to be an either or, well, I either go with my heart or I go with my head. They are not mutually exclusive. I do live in the neighborhood, and I can't deny that I live in the neighborhood, and I can't apologize for the fact that I live in the neighborhood and happen to be on council. And so when taken all together, I just cannot support the current plan for these the seven duplexes. I feel, and this memo that Mr. Raynone had put forth really clarified that for me. So that is the reason for my vote of overturning. Thank you.
Councilman Pointer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. I will attempt to be brief, but as you may know, this is not a normal circumstance, and I tend to elaborate a lot, so please bear with me. As mentioned, our decision must be substantiated by the record. We are tasked with performing a de novo review of the record established before the zoning board, coming up with our own conclusion. As mentioned, we can either affirm, repeal, amend, or send back. According to NJSA 4055D-17D, the applicant is required to provide enhanced quality of proof to their findings and conclusions. For us here, we are to analyze and see if the following criteria were met. 1, do special reasons exist for the granting of the variance? 2, variance can be granted, 1, without substantial detriment to the public good, and 2, will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. In review of number 1, I agree with the findings that there is special reason that exists for granting the use variance, unless the adjacent property owners were to purchase any of the property outside of the non-conforming use currently would require a variance. As such, I do agree that the special use consideration is met. In review of item number 2, my focus will be on the second part regarding the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. I do not find the applicant met the required enhanced quality of proof as required by the state. I use the municipal land use law promoted purposes as primary basis for my analysis. In section 2, it identifies that 15 stated purposes of the municipal land use law. Mr. Phillips, the applicant's planner, testified the plan promoted 5 purposes of the MLUL, those being items A, E, G, I, and L. In my review of these items, I looked to the actual municipal land use full liturgy to come to my conclusion. To item A, outside of comments on general welfare, I found lacking discussion on how public health and safety are promoted. Concerning morals and general welfare, I guess that depends if you feel having available housing stock satisfies those items, which for me, it does not offer much to back up that argument. Reviews by police, fire, and health departments provide overviews to the proposed use if their departments could perform any of the required tasks that may be needed. They do not indicate that the project promotes those types of departments and their specific uses. To item E, discussions on density focus on whether the lot size could handle a certain population amount, not whether the permanent residence of this population was appropriate. Testimony did not address that X amount of people in this specific area would be beneficial to the township. To the thought that housing stock and fiscal impact studies satisfy this, I disagree. Affirming a positive fiscal statement or that housing stock may be needed does not mean that the proposed plan is automatically suitable for the property. I also do not recall testimony as to how this preserves the environment, which is specific to item E. To item G, similar to the previous point, I do not feel an enhanced proof was provided. It would seem to me that in review of a specific type of building, that a full analysis would be requested to compare the proposed specifications against those zoning guidelines. In review of the plan, certain items were compared against the GC zone, such as building height, while others compared against the townhouse zones, such as acre requirement and FAR, seemingly choosing whichever zone better backed up the argument. No testimony was provided, to my recollection, that analyzed a complete check against the other zones. Ironically, Mr. Bassoff did attempt in the February meeting to address these concerns, which were not addressed at that point or at the future meeting. As to I, testimony was provided that alterations were made so the units better fit with the neighborhood. I found the record lacking, specifically in review of the aesthetics of the building facades and spacing between the residences. Undoubtedly, a new development would be more appealing than a vacant one. The desirable visual environment, though, is a subjective one in my viewpoint. I view the desirable environment as one that blends in with the neighborhood and the characteristics the current housing stock exemplifies, which in my opinion, these do not. As to item L, I think this criteria is met given the age restriction application as provided. Finally, it was recognized by professional testimony that the proposed development would be a first of its kind, whereas townhouse development, as defined by Edison's code, were to be allowed in the GC zone. This can be found on the transcript of page 65 from the February 20th meeting. Additionally, I believe this would become the first townhouse development that abuts a GC zone, if approved. I want to mention the narrative of precedent. It is my understanding that each zoning case is unique in and of its own. What is true for one case may not be true for another. However, applicants often use examples of similar properties to support their applications. Examples of such exist on the record here, where the applicant's professionals compared Harding and Pumptown corners to support their case. In conclusion, I look to the following quote from the applicant's planner, transcript page 50 from June 28, 2022, to help guide my conclusion. In quote, "To me, all of this suggests that the site is particularly suited for what I characterize as a sort of small, self-contained multifamily development. And I say that with a caveat provided, of course, that adequate safeguards can be put in place relative to the product type, the building placement, the height, density, setbacks, and buffers. While I can agree that in principle, a multifamily age-restricted development may possibly be suitable for this property, I do not agree, per my previous comments, that the safeguards I would deem adequate are in place relative to the building placement, heights, setbacks, or buffers, and that it would not impair the intent of the zone and the zone plan. While I have suggestions to adjustments that can be made to facilitate appropriate safeguards, the fact is that those would technically not be supported by the record and would require additional testimony. Likewise, if the zoning board cannot establish over a year period, which covered 3 meetings, hours of deliberations, and hundreds of pages of documents, the information which would lead me to agreeing with the decision, I don't know what the point would be to send it back to the zoning board. We should be diligent to ensure that proper safeguards are in place that protect the residents of the township, not only in the immediate, but long term. I do not believe the record, as established, provides the evidence necessary for me to reaffirm the zoning board's decision, and therefore I believe the decision should be overturned. Thank you.
Are there any other council members for comment? Councilman Brescher?
Well, I'm not going to be able to sum that up like that, but I mean, I'm going to make it a little simpler. You know, in reading the testimony and watching videos, because I started reading the testimony and then I decided it might be easier to watch the videos. I noticed that we had the positive and negative criteria that the zoning board believed that they were making the correct decision on. Some of the items that they looked at, I disagree with. So I don't believe that, you know, because it's an arterial roadway, you don't want to have single-family homes or anything of that nature. And it looks like there's more of an opinion in a lot of the testimony than there was actual scientific facts that could be substantiated. So it looked like the zoning board made their decision, and a lot of that was an opinion. Another thing that happened here was I see that we used the term duplex, which from what I understand doesn't exist in our book, but it does exist in the state book. I think the zoning board, in looking at this, was trying to do what planning and the council should do. I believe that they should have sent this to the council to look at, maybe planning, and made the recommendations to be changed in our master plan, instead of taking it upon themselves to change a zone and make it what they want. And at the end of the day, when I looked at what this would look like, it looks like textbook spot zoning. I mean, they could have came to the council and said, what does the council recommend? And we would have sent it to planning, and maybe planning would have said, listen, let's incorporate it into the residential zone. We don't know, because that never happened. Again, they took it upon themselves to make it like a spot zone. And when we look at it and say that there is no other property that could be exactly like this, I am informed that we do have the property on Grove Avenue, which abuts single-family homes, abuts a golf course, and is on a main road. So it had the three things that they talked about as to why you would want these townhomes or duplexes. And I know that that's not a basis for a decision, but my decision is based on the first two. The one is basically that there wasn't compelling evidence. It was more of an opinion. And the second, that they should have came to council to seek, or planning. I think it goes, council recommends it to go to planning, I think. And that should have been the proper procedure, but the zoning board shouldn't have overstepped their bounds. So I'll be voting no on this.
Council President?
Yes,
Yeah,
Councilman.
again, if you look at the whole testimonies and, several documents, there were too many contradictions in the notes from the applicant itself. If you see first time, one opinion, then second opinion, then third opinion. So I don't think there was an affirmative idea to begin with. And working with the neighborhood, working with the resident would have helped and would not have been to this stage at all. Again, looking at the sentiment, when I heard there were 3 marathon meetings, I tried watching some of them, and there were obvious concerns from the residents, and many of those residents are here in the audience, and I agree with the sentiment of my council colleagues, and they should really, zoning board really overstepped in their authority in multiple areas, and for that reason, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Looking at the record, I do not see that they need a special reason or special permission here. They didn't meet any of the special requirements. I believe they do need a variance, and they can get an RA district or RBB district variance and go from there. That would be my opinion on it. Thank you.
Any other council comment? Madam Clerk, could we have a roll call vote on this? This is a motion to overturn the variances issued by the zoning board.
Councilmember Brescher.
Yes.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Patel.
Yes.
Councilmember Patil.
Yes.
Councilmember Pointer.
Yes.
Councilmembership Freeman.
Yes.
Council President Coyle.
Yes.
Motion passes. The decision of the zoning board is overturned on appeal. Thank you. At this time, I'll turn the meeting back to the council president.
Okay, council members, we're going to reconvene our meeting of the council? We need a motion to reopen this meeting? We're just going to,
We can just continue, Council
Okay.
President, yes.
council members, for the approval of the minutes, can I have a motion to approve the minutes for September 14th and 28th?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Councilman Patil, can I have a second?
Second.
Councilor Harris, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Council President remarks, I have none. Public comment on the resolutions only. Can I open up the public for the comment on the resolutions only? Mr. Stoschel. Okay.
Walt Stoschel, 2118 Oak Tree Road. On 649 for Kilmer Road, Kilmer Court, and the road resurfacing, 663, 64, and 65. I'd like to see that the town does what Woodbridge, Metuchen, Plainfield, and Piscataway is, and incorporate bicycle improvements to those roads that are going to be fixed. I don't know why we're doing Kilmer Road and Kilmer Court, because I've been out there numerous times, and there doesn't seem to be a problem with the traffic. On 650, the Swales Church survey, I have a letter from the Open Space Committee, and it says the Edison Open Space Committee has reviewed the resolution 650 10/2022, and it is not clear to which property is being surveyed, as no block and lot numbers or street addresses given. The committee would like to know which property is being surveyed by lot and block number. The committee is assuming the property to be surveyed is Block 351, Lot 11, which is on Parkway and is owned by St. James Church and is next to Swales Park. Block 351, Lot 11, and Swales Park were part of the Piscataway Town Commons, which was set aside as a park by the settlers of Piscataway in the 1690s. In 1961, the township sold Block 351, Lot 11 to St. James Church, and for the past 61 years, the lot has been used as an outfield of the adjoining baseball field in Swales Park and maintained by the township. This lot is shown on the 2018 open space plan adopted by the planning board as an element of the master plan as a potential open space acquisition. Swales Park has been a park since the 1690s and is on the Edison Recreational and Open Space Inventory and is restricted by Green Acres. In 2015, Middlesex County and the Archaeological Society of New Jersey did a study of this lot and found numerous historic artifacts, 6 prehistoric Native American artifacts. The site is registered with the state of New Jersey State Museum as site number 28-MI-267. See attached form, and I have that form attached, and I'll leave that here for the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce Diamond. Comments on the resolutions only.
Bruce Diamond, Calvert. 644, Hank Bignell as Administrator Officer to the Planning Board. I think this is coming at a great time. I think with Hank's duties now in town helping rewrite code, it's important that we coordinate that with the new master plan. So this is a great example of what goes wrong when you don't coordinate building codes with master plans. You put the zoning board in a bad spot, maybe deciding something that should have been decided by the township long ago. With 661, it's about the radar trailer, I guess. It's another one of those trailers.
It's a message sign board.
661.
I have a message sign board, old traffic
Yeah.
stations.
Why aren't we getting those little 2x3, 18 inches by 20-inch signs that go on telephone poles or this or that, that you see in Metuchen, for example, where you can move them around easy, they just strap to a pole. They're probably a lot less money, they're not on a trailer, and they're just very, very easily moved. And I have to believe they're a lot less money because they're just not as big and complicated as the trailers with the maintaining your speed. And also, I'll sit down for 668. Can you please explain why we're putting out a contract for basic life support? I'm confused. I thought the contract was with JFK to provide health service, the ambulance service for town, and our volunteers supplement that. Is there something different planned?
This is rejecting the bid.
But why did we ask for it 2 weeks ago anyway? I still don't understand that.
Can we wait till the end? I'll answer that, if you don't mind. If you're done, just to stay there. If you're finished, Mr. Diamond, do you have an answer for that?
By law, we have to rebid it every 5 years. So we were rebidding that, and the person who bid on it did not give all the documents, so I have to reject it and rebid it.
So potentially it'd be the same that our vols
If
would
the person-
supplement another service, if
Well,
not JFK?
that particular contract with the volunteers is between the contractor, who the vendor, and the volunteer company.
But is that one of our specs? That we
In the
expect
specs,
that
we
to
don't have
happen?
anything about the volunteers. We just have to bid out that contract, and that service. So whoever wins that contract can deal with the volunteers themselves.
So we're not requiring whoever
No, we
gets the
don't require
contract.
that. No, we can't.
What a terrible waste of so many volunteers, isn't that now?
Well, they do that.
Diamond.
They do volunteer.
Anybody else from the public on the resolutions only? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close the public portion on the resolutions?
Motion to close the public portion on resolutions.
Have a second? Yeah, Mr. Krista, on the resolutions only.
Thank you, Christo, South Edison, the real South Edison.
Your name and address, please.
Christo, South Edison, this is how I've always,
What's the record to reflect you're running for the Board of Ed, and your address is for record. You have the floor.
okay. R639, resolution increasing the contract amount awarded to New Jersey Community Solutions for consulting services for personnel and other matters in the amount of $20,000, and to council, through the council president to Councilman Brescher, one of the things that makes me think of, what are we hiring an outside firm $20,000? Is there someone here that doesn't know what they're doing? And so we have to hire people to tell other people what to do that are already getting paid to do that same service? That's a good question.
What number was that resolution?
39.
Yeah, R639. R640. $9,400 for the DJ equipment. I'd like to also know, at what events are we spending this for? I heard we said a few events, but I'd like to see that. For Mr. Bignell, I'm very excited. For R644, I'm very excited we have Mr. Bignell here. I don't remember if it was the planning or zoning board that you were at before this, but, when I would ask you for certain paperwork, even if it was, you didn't have copies of it, I remember you give it to me right away, whether it was the papers, contaminated property and whatnot. So I appreciate that. You always came through when it was something of that nature. How much time do I have left, Marlena? 3 minutes, okay. For R619, resolution authorizing the cannabis retail license, I'm against this. I want as many marijuana businesses as we could get here in Edison, but how many of the other applicants did we have? We're not asking people to put in their applications. We're not picking the best companies to come in here. We're handing out licenses to the friends and family of the current administration, and that's something that I don't like. Through the chair to Councilman Brescher, you want somebody, to come here and set up a marijuana business that they've already been doing this. So this way, you look at Woodbridge. Woodbridge is a complete overprice. Everything they have there is overpriced. Do you guys even know the name of the person from JHAC? I know I can look online and find out that information, but that's not the point. Do you know the person for JHAC? That's a question for each council members they can ask after this. I'd like to know where in running a Dunkin' Donuts, through the chair to Councilman Brescher, of course, Councilman Brescher, I'd like to know where in running a Dunkin' Donuts business does somebody become an expert at cannabis retail? See, last time I asked the name of the person, I already knew the name of the person. I wanted to see if they knew the name of the person. So that's just... And the guy before that we gave the cannabis license to was selling bath salts to underage kids out of a smoke shop in Metuchen. So, God forbid. And he happened to be one of the trustees to the library board. And Neville. And happened to be a part of Sam Joshi's campaign. So, forgive me that I find it very suspicious. Are we now giving our friends and family licenses to become legalized drug dealers? That's a real good question. A lot of residents have been targeted all our lives just for smoking a joint. And now people that they've never had any effect, and I'll say this to through the chair to Councilwoman Joyce, people that were never affected by this drug
You have to
epidemic.
stick to the resolutions.
I am. I'm talking about the marijuana. I'm talking people that were never affected by the marijuana epidemic are now being given cannabis licenses. And I remember when we're giving out cannabis licenses, it was supposed to be first to minority people and people that were affected by the drug epidemic. So my next question is going to be, this Dunkin' Donuts owner, he seems very good off. He's already owns a Dunkin' Donuts. Do you think he was a victim of the epidemic? That's a good question. It's a good question to ask, because here you guys created these policies to hand out marijuana licenses, and you're not even following your own policies. You're just... And I'd like to say, yeah, in the whole of America, Indians might be a minority, but here in Edison, New Jersey, make no mistake, they are the majority. So when we're giving out minority licenses, please, let's make sure we're giving out to minorities, Latinos, blacks, thank you.
Speaker's time has elapsed.
Real minorities.
Anybody else on the resolutions only?
Motion to close the public portion.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries to close the public portion. Council members, from my right, Councilmember Brescher, any resolutions to be pulled?
668, 669, 670, 650,
669, 670.
650, and 619.
You want all separate vote? Is there anything can be combined?
You can do 669 and 670, put them together. I'm just abstaining, I didn't read them.
No problem. Madam Clerk, okay, so any other council members?
619 for the separate vote. I know Councilman Brescher mentioned bunch of them, but
We had that
Just
right.
this
I have
one separate vote.
668, 669, 670, 650, and 619. Is that correct, Councilman Brusher?
619, 650, 668, 669, and 670.
Okay, I'll just do it in the order that it was because it's not how you give it to me. 619, 650, 668, 669, and 670, correct?
I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
Giving into the order 619, 650, 668, 669, and 670.
Correct.
Okay. Good. If any other council members? Any? Member Harris? Anything to be pulled?
No, sir.
Council Vice President? Councilmember Patel? Councilmember Patil?
None.
Any Councilmember Porter?
None, sir.
Have a motion to
Madam President, can I have a point of information,
I'm
please?
sorry.
We
I
do.
don't know why
we
you're-
So you're out of order.
We
You're out of
don't
order.
have the resolution to.
So
Can
you're
you
out
just
of
read the
order.
title?
You're out of order.
Out of order. I think you're probably looking for the added resolutions.
Yeah.
That were
please.
added.
Just by title.
So can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda withholding 619, 650, 668, 669, and 670?
Motion to approve.
Councilman Porter?
Seconded.
Who was the second? Councilmember
Seconded.
Patil? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Brusher.
Yes.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Patel.
Yes.
Councilmember Patil.
Yes.
Councilmember Pointer.
Yes.
Councilmember Ship Freeman.
Yes.
Council President Coyle.
Yes. We'll start with 619 for a separate vote. Councilmember Patil?
Council President?
Yes.
Thank you for, thank you, Councilman Pointer, for providing the additional details about this applicant. It's at length, nice supporting documents. I only have one question that I would like to ask attorney. In terms of because the supporting document says 1,000 facility facility should be located greater than 1,000 feet from church, residential, neighborhood, etc. That's what the criteria is of that zone. But when I look at the way the distance is measured is not from the boundary of the property, but from the building of the property. And even it is not the linear feet, but it is a walkable distance. So that changes the whole paradigm. So if I look at from the distance from the property line to the closest residential property, it is less than 1,000 feet. And I don't know whether that's
From the structure. From the building.
understood, but still, if I go with a linear feet, it's still not 1,000 feet. It's less than 1,000 feet. An applicant had mentioned that. He mentioned the different way, the walking distance, that's completely separate. But that's what my question is on what's our zoning law says. It is the straight line linear distance, or it is whatever the way I can draw the line to make it 1,000 feet?
I would have to get back to you on that. We'd have to do some research on it specifically. And I can certainly get back to you on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, that doesn't really change the decision of approval because at the end of the day, it will go in front of the zoning board for their approval, but just wanted to bring it to the attention. Thank you.
Council President?
Yes.
To the lawyer. But what I gathered from this understanding, this is just the step, and it has to go to the actual state for them to vet the person completely before they actually get the final license.
That's absolutely correct. There's an extensive application process by the state for approval of any cannabis license. This is merely one box that needs to be checked before they can make that application to the state. So that's all. That's what this resolution does this evening. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, because that's why I studied it more, because the first one I abstained because I didn't read all the legality and all the information. Now that I'm more sure of how it has to go through that extensive operation with the state, I feel more comfortable now when I vote.
Any other council members' comments for 619? Madam Clerk, roll call. Oh, sorry, we have a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Councilman Harris,
Second.
second. Councilman Patel.
Councilmember Brescher.
No.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Patel.
Yes.
Councilmember Patil.
Yes.
Councilmember Pointer.
Yes.
Councilmember Ship Freeman.
Yes.
Councilperson Coyle.
Yes. 650, Councilmember Brescher.
Yes, I guess I don't feel comfortable with spending $18,000 for a survey the size of my property that maybe I paid $4,500 for, but now I'm paying $18,000 or something, and not having an agreement that we can swap the one land for the other. You know, typically you would get an agreement, you'd have it signed, both parties agree to it, and then you would invest in doing your surveys to find out exactly what your points were. So I just don't feel comfortable in voting on putting the cart before the horse, that's all.
Council President,
Yes.
a quick question on this. Is this a no-bid contract? Because the survey fee seems to be way high. Again, maybe it's a topography survey or it's a simple survey. I don't know the nitty-gritty of that because it simply says survey.
Councilmember Patil, I'm going to recommend we table this, and let me try to get a motion to table it.
Perfect.
I
Thank
have a
you.
motion to table 650?
Motion to table?
Yeah.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion's tabled. The, okay,
Yeah, we'll have to
Learn
take
never to
the
argue with the clerk.
let me just start all over again.
roll call.
Have a motion to table 650.
Motion to table?
Patil, and have a second?
Second.
Councilman Harris. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Brescher.
Yes.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Patel.
Yes.
Councilmember Patil.
Yes.
Councilmember Pointer.
Yes.
Councilmember Ship Freeman.
Yes.
Council President Coyle.
Yes. 668, Councilmember Brescher.
Yes, I was going to vote, I was going to abstain on all three because I just received them, I didn't get to read them. But it was brought to my attention that that we're bidding out our ambulance service. And there was an agreement that our volunteers would be used in the last contract we had with JFK. Now, I don't know if that was written or if that was just a gentleman's agreement, but I do know, I think it was the first year JFK didn't give them any work, and then we lost like all these volunteers. And then what happened was they started to give them calls, and they started building up their volunteers again. And I guess what I'm afraid of is if purchasing doesn't have some kind of clause in there where our volunteers will get calls, well, the volunteers we have will just disappear. And the whole part of community will be just, you know, I don't know. But before it goes out to bid again, I'd request that purchasing and the administration speak to legal on how maybe they can incorporate the volunteers into this, because this right here isn't passing, right? This was a bid that came in and you're rejecting it.
Yes, this is just this year is just a complete, the same as the one the last time. And I recall that the time we did it last time, it was determined that we could not do that. But I will definitely check with the current attorneys, or I'll talk to administration about that before we rebid it. But I still need to reject this because it was rejected, and I will definitely ask them, if you choose not to do that, though, then I got to come back again in 2 weeks and reject this. So, we do have a extension with the current company, so we're kind of on a time limit, but that's your choice. But I will ask them. But the reason we did the exact same bid is because at the last time that we first redid this, it was determined we couldn't put that in there and force a company to take our volunteer, or take any particular volunteers. Don't forget, they're not really our volunteers. They're,
Right.
they're not our volunteers. So they weren't our employees, so we couldn't at that time force them to take, volunteers. I can double-check that. I have no problem doing that or asking administration to do that.
Right, because there was a lot of talk about maybe reviving our volunteers. I mean, buying our own ambulance, the whole thing, but, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Brescher.
Yes.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Patel.
Yes.
Councilmember Patil.
Yes.
Councilmember Pointer.
Yes.
Councilmember Ship Freeman.
Yes.
Council President Coyle.
Yes. Councilman Brescher, 669 and 670.
No comment. Didn't read it. Just have it on my desk here now, so.
Okay. Abstain. Okay.
Motion to,
Council members have a motion to approve.
motion to approve?
Second.
Second. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Brescher.
No.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Patel.
Yes.
Councilmember Patil.
Yes.
Councilmember Pointer.
Yes.
Councilmember Ship Freeman.
Yes.
Council President Coyle.
Yes.
Yes, correct, that's right. Yeah, we did them together. 69, 70. I think we did. We said for both, right? We said for both, yeah, we're good. We're good.
I just wanted to redo this roll call, just that we clarify we're voting on 669 and 670. Have a motion to approve 669 and 670.
Motion to approve?
Have a second?
Second, I think we just did, it was combined, right?
I know, but
Yeah.
we just,
Two, yeah.
Thank you.
in case we didn't specifically clarify. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Brescher.
Abstain.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Patel.
Yes.
Councilmember Patil.
Yes.
Councilmember Pointer.
Yes.
Councilmember Ship Freeman.
Yes.
Council President Coyle.
Yes. Took another 30 seconds.
All good.
All right. The oral petition remarks are Walter Stoschel.
Walt Stoschel, 2118 Oak Tree Road.
You recognize you have the floor.
I appealed 3 zoning board decisions to the council in the past 30 years. And I want to make a comment that your attorney did an excellent job in running the appeal process. I think the council got good advice and good direction, and there was no confusion in what you had to do. So I appreciate that, and I think you got good advice. At the last council meeting, I talked about we were going to do a bike ride on Kilmer Road, and the Open Space Committee has a letter to the council about what we did. On September 28th, members of the Open Space Committee did a demonstration ride on October 2nd. The weather was rainy, and we had 3 bicycle riders, 1 walker, and 1 person in a motorized wheelchair. Based on the demonstration ride, the committee feels that Kilmer Road would be a good bike route with bike lanes as identified on the 1995 bike plan. Our observations are Kilmer Road, Edison Township, the road surface is good. North half has been repaved since the water line work in 2019. The driveways for the buildings on Kilmer Road are far apart. Catch basins have bike grates on them. There are no curbs or catch basins from Truman Drive to Road 2. No painted line for the shoulders on Kilmer Road at all. The Edison's train station driveway, which is run by New Jersey Transit, the road surface is good. It's easy to ride through the parking lot to the bike parking at the station. Bike racks are at the beginning of the sidewalk. Cedar Lane, which is a Middlesex County road. The road surface is good. The catch basins have bike grates. The road is 4 lanes wide with no shoulder, and the curves making it hard for vehicles to see the bicycles ahead. There are 2 speed limit signs, 25 miles an hour on the Edison section, westbound by Road 2 and eastbound by C Court. Westbound by Road 1, there's a reduced speed sign, yet the speed limit sign in Highland Park a few feet away is 25 miles an hour, leading drivers to think that the Edison section must be faster and have a higher speed limit. At Road 1, the intersection has no easy connection to the Cedar Lane bike path. Bicycles need to turn right onto Road 1, past the Warehouse Road, then turn left to enter the Cedar Lane bike path. The Rutgers bike route begins at Road 1. Road 1, which is owned by Rutgers but is in Edison, the road surface is aging, painted and signed with bike lanes on either side of the road. Bike lanes begin at Warehouse Road. The bike lane turns left onto Road 3 and into the Livingston campus. Road 1 then ends at the guardrail at the intersection of Road 2, Cedar-Kilmer intersection. We had some other observation, like why is Cedar Lane in Edison 4 lanes wide? Kilmer Road, Cedar Lane, Road 2 intersection is on a curve. A participant remarked that they had seen a number of accidents by cars that did not make the curve over the years. Road width and markings. Kilmer Road is 50 feet to 60 feet wide and is marked for 1 lane in each direction. Lanes at Kilmer Court and the train station and Truman Drive. Drivers that drive next to the center yellow lines and do the speed limit of 25 miles an hour are often passed on the right where there is no marked lane. The road could be marked with bike lanes on each side and 1 traffic lane in each direction and left turns at the driveways. Thank you. If you have any questions, please contact us.
Walt, did you drive all that?
We biked all that in the rain.
Thank you. I meant bike, but,
Council President, it was about 2 miles.
okay, but it's very specific. Bruce Diamond.
Bruce Diamond, Calvert. Just to tag on what Walter said, I remember 5-10 years ago, there used to be a bike rack downstairs at the entrance. Why don't we have a bike rack at Town Hall?
Yeah.
Why don't we have a couple bike racks? I know people bike to our open space meetings in town when they're at the Town Hall. The other thing is, and I guess if I can ask the attorney a question, what I don't understand, the immediate results of tonight's hearing were wonderful to the people who were objecting to the townhouses. But we both know that's not the end of the day. So why isn't there a mechanism to have either held it and renegotiated a reduction in units or something, rather than the applicant going out and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and us spending $100,000 because it's going to go to court? He can't go back to zoning board, can he? If he decides to reduce it to 12 units on its own, is that a new application?
Bruce, I think I have to wait till after all the public comments, and then Council President.
I got to go home and walk the dog. Give me a break.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't tell you,
I already got 2 texts from my wife. You want me to tell her to call you?
I gotta follow.
You
I gotta
don't
follow
want
the
that,
rules, man.
trust
I'm
me.
sorry.
She was a school teacher for special ed kids. She don't take crap,
I hear you. I hear you.
okay? So real quickly, cut to the chase.
We're going to wait to the end. I'm sorry, Bruce. For you, I got to start for everybody. Christo?
Thank you very much. Christo, South Edison, the real South Edison. Am I recognized?
Recognize you have the floor.
Thank you very much. What happened at the last council meeting was a disgrace. Council President Joe Coyle stopped me from expressing my freedom of speech while at the same time lying that I did not give my name and town in order to speak. Anyone who has a brain and watches the last meeting will see that in fact I did. As a matter of fact, Councilwoman Margot Harris asked, why are we stopping him from talking? He gave his information. Thank you very much for having integrity. God bless you, Councilwoman Margot Harris. All year long, Joe Coyle has been denying my right to speak because it's in his best interest not to hear what I have to say. He creates havoc to keep me from speaking. That is how scared he is of what I have to say. To the council president Coyle, to the lawyer. Lawyer, at the last meeting you said, we have allowed this individual to speak at length, to the most vulgar extent, and we have allowed him to express himself. You don't allow me to do anything, Council President. The United States Constitution and the law allows me. You're not some benevolent God that I have to take orders from. I'm not your servant. The lawyer said at the last meeting, many people in the community have been upset by the things that we have allowed to transpire in these chambers. You should tell these people they're allowed to their opinion, but you have to follow the law. And you cannot just violate people's rights. Again, an example, you can have a room, you can't just say remove Italian people, remove Greek people, remove Spanish people, just because of mob rule. Is this what we're becoming here in Edison Township? Who would ever think that a debate about putting a name on a list is so controversial? Through the chair to Councilman Brescher. You know, I feel I have the right to retain my Fourth Amendment while I express my First Amendment. A police officer cannot tell me to force me to give my name and address to them. What does a government person think they have the right to do that? The Constitution doesn't say everybody has the right to the Fourth Amendment up until we walk up to the podium, and then we have to give it up. So I apologize if I want to make a debate about me wanting to retain my Fourth Amendment while I express my First Amendment. I wanted to explain people use pen names, you know, what's it matter if I want to go by George or Stephen? Doesn't matter. Here we have grown men that want to use a little girl's bathroom. We're telling second graders they can choose their gender, but I'm not allowed to choose my own name. And where does it say in the rules and policies that you have to use your government name? It doesn't say that. Actually, the Sunshine Law says when it's the public's time to speak, let them speak. You guys created a policy on top of that, which says you have to give your name and address. Of course, you guys think that's reasonable. I'm sorry that I think it's unreasonable. I think it's unreasonable because the Constitution says it's unreasonable. It's not my opinion. This is not Nazi Germany. I don't have to walk around with my papers. I don't have to walk around with my identification. And Council President Joe Coyle, with all due respect, if you can't handle my opinion, I'm sorry, that's my opinion. Well, some of them are facts, but I still have the right to come up here and express those views, whether you agree with me or not. There's no reason to turn this into a war zone. There's no reason for Mayor Sam Joshi and Councilman Joe Coyle to stretch their muscles and give cops orders that they have no place to give them orders on. They're not the law enforcement officers. It's the law enforcement officers' right to use their discretion, not to be screamed at by someone who's uneducated on the law, whether to remove or not to remove somebody. How much time do I have left, Marlena?
1 minute.
I'm going to put you in the tort claim, specifically you and your law firm, because you gave them bad legal advice. Your job is to give the board advice as a whole, not to cover up for one person's actions. Anyone who watches that video will see, yes, I gave my name. You claim that because I used a fictitious name, first of all, fictitious is a perception. I might claim another name, like other people claim a certain gender. At the end of the day, it's my right. I feel that you and Joe Coyle are going on the tort claim. My lawsuit's going against you. They are now advising these cops, it's okay. He's the lowest form of humanity. He has no money. He won't find a lawyer to do the lawsuit. If it was a Bill Gates, somebody with money, they'd never do that. And I'm saying like this, here in America, shouldn't we all be treated equally? Isn't that what the Constitution says, to treat everybody equally? Just because I'm not rich like a Bill Gates, is that any reason to tell the cops, go ahead, screw this guy over, and if he puts a lawsuit in, we'll just absorb it anyway? That's not right.
Time is up. Next
These-
speaker,
These opinions are my own, and
and your time to
Time
sit
is
down.
up.
Sure, Sam. Sorry, Maria was on the list. I apologize.
Oh, I'm
Maria.
sorry.
You go, Sam. I apologize. I didn't get, she's yielding to you. Please, Sam.
Sorry. Sandeep Ramakrishna from Edgewood Road, Edison. First, thank you very much. I just want to make some brief comments. Very articulate thoughts, Mr. Poiner. Thank you. The point which I want to make is, on the zoning board, we tried to make the exact same comments as what you're making. The perception from the zoning board is that you have an expert witness versus an ordinary citizen. You make the same points as, we make the same points as what you did. We did the research. We told them we did the research. However, the issue is expert witness versus a common person. So thinking out loud, what is the answer going forward? Right? This is a constant issue which we will be hit with over and over again. I believe, we've talked this in the past, a public advocate is the answer to help bridge the gap of expert witness versus an expert witness. Where it stands in the court of law is different. It can be challenged at the court of law on the outcome at the end of the zoning board rulings, but then you have equal footing at the court to say there were two expert witnesses talking about these things, and now you look at the merit of the case and then decide. Versus where we've seen over and over again where the court decides because there was an expert witness versus common people. That's what I want to highlight. So I hope you consider appointing the public advocate and at least have conversations about it and debate about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria?
Maria Orchid, 83 Jefferson.
You're recognized. You have the floor.
Thank you. October 15th is the Thomas Edison Tower Harvest Fund from 12 to 3 p.m. October 22nd, our lovely Echo Tours on the Piscataway Burial Ground from 12 to 3 p.m., followed by the Twilight Tour, never know who you'll meet, from 3:30 to 5 p.m. Please check a beautiful Edison website for upcoming volunteer opportunities. Volunteers needed from the 21st, 22nd, and the 29th. On October 29th is our trick-or-treat trunking at Lake Papiani from 1 to 4. We're looking for donations and gift cards to give free to the children that attend. So if anybody can donate, please see Sergeant Ship. Any updates on a traffic study from Old Post Road and the Boulevard of Eagles? Updates on crossing guards? Do we have enough? Are we still looking? Any updates on the Senior Citizen Center? Any updates on the high catalytic converter thefts? And to remind the residents, please lock your cars. Last, don't forget to mail your anchor rebates. That's also good for homeowners as well as renters. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Yes, Elizabeth Conway.
Elizabeth Conway, 20 Netherwood Circle.
You're recognized. You have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to thank you. You did a good job tonight. You did an excellent job keeping them doing what they were supposed to. You really did your homework, and he was fabulous. And the only reason I'm saying this is my question was that this Markham had purchased this land, as far as I know, they purchased it. And with each no, they changed. Okay, let's try this. Let's try that. So what I'm hoping, and my husband always says, I always think of a glass half full, is that they will be coming back to the zoning board with single-family homes. And that would keep all of us happy. So I applaud you all for that. And of course, I'm here every month for the same reasons. Inman Avenue still looks like a slum as far as the mowing of that one piece of property. It's getting harder and harder to push a carriage when the grass is coming aboard. And my tree is losing its leaves, so you're really not going to see how much it's dead. And I was wondering if there was an update on what's going on with the trees, or should I just be spending another $500 to $1,000 that I've been doing for the last 4 years?
Do you have a specific address?
Of
I
my house?
apologize, of the property.
20
you
Netherwood
want?
Circle. Oh,
I
you're
didn't know-
talking
I
about?
didn't know you were on Inman Avenue.
Oh, Inman Avenue, I had said it's right on Inman Avenue, the south side, between the Progress Street and the Progress Street. And if you look across, you'll see it.
I think DPW took care of it in the past.
What's that?
I think DPW took care of it in the past.
Well, from what I'm gathering, one of you pick up the phone and call the county, and then it's done once, and then it's not done until the following year. But it's a major artery of our township, and it doesn't look good to our neighborhood. And if you notice, I believe I sent to 4 of you an update on my favorite home in the neighborhood on Wood Avenue. It's amazing that that fits into the surrounding neighborhood. Thank you. And they did clean up the curb area on Inman Avenue. I thank you for that, from Mr. Coyle. And the home on Roxy, they did do the street section. They didn't do the homeowner section. They just did the street section, but it's at least a little more passable. I thank you.
I'll get you an answer, thank you. Any other speakers, first-time speakers? Mr. Fagan?
Mick Fagan, 42 Edgewood Road.
You recognize you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually wrote a whole different speech, and if I had paper, I would be ripping it up right now, because I'm very shocked, or I'm taken aback by the decision today. So thank you, counselors, not only for the vote, but thank you for the homework and the research. There's close to 1,000 pages in it's this thick, right? And besides watching the videos of, I don't know how many hours it is, it's probably at least 6 hours, if not more. Thank you for all of that homework. It came through in your questions, and you understand the case fully, and just thank you for doing that, and thank you for running a well-run, non-biased exchange of ideas and a fair hearing. We know that this is not done. For the residents that are watching, we know that the applicant will come back and probably sue us. They'll sue the town, and that'll be okay. The town will defend its decision. Or they'll come back with a different plan. And hopefully they've heard us tonight, that what is acceptable to the neighbors as a plan, and what we won't fight you on, Mr. Roshansky. So please hear us. And if you're wise, you'll do the plan that the neighbors have asked for. The other people I wanted to thank as well for tonight and how we got here is the neighbors. So some of them are still here today, our diehard folks, and you're seeing a movement throughout Edison when we talk about overdevelopment, and the mayor, Mr. Joshi, had talked about overdevelopment and wanting to combat overdevelopment. He's spot on, right? He's 100% right, and he's hearing from the residents from all over town. Mr. Cash Saraya just had some success in a planning board decision at Hector and Center, where a developer wanted to turn one lot into 5 homes. And that failed at a 6-3 vote last week, 2 weeks ago? Can't remember. But just recently. And so there is a movement among the neighbors, and there is a drumbeat among the neighbors and the voters and the residents that, hey, we need to look at our master plan, and I'm so happy that we're having a meeting next week, and the first public meeting to get the master plan going, so that we can decide together what is the future of our town instead of developers dictating what the future is of our traffic and our overcrowding in our schools and so on and so forth. So thank you to the residents for providing a voice and being steady in their support and in contacting you folks, and thank you for your vote. Lastly, thank you to Mr. Joel Bassoff. The research and the writing that he had put together, you guys saw it, but the public didn't see it. It's, I don't know, there's 50 pages worth of writing that he did, and all of the research that comes from behind into making that kind of a document is tremendous and momentous, and it's a lot of work. So Joel, you did a great job, and thank you very so much. Thank you.
Next speaker in the back.
Manny Coelho, 54 Elmire Road.
You're recognized. You have the floor.
Thank you. First of all, as you all know, Edison is a tree city, and that's something I'm very happy about. But I am, and I don't know all the tree removal rules in Edison, but I am concerned in the area where I live up in North Edison that we are losing a lot of our trees. An example, walking my dog down this Utica, got the corner of Ramsey and Utica, to Ramsey. There used to be a house there with a nice treed lot. It's gone. The house is gone, every bush is gone, and every tree is gone. It's just clear-cutted. And I'm just wondering I'm just hoping that some Edison, that you guys can do whatever you can to stop developers from clear-cutting. Is there any way we can have them at least keep some of the trees on the lot? And, oh, by the way, I was here this afternoon and I checked, and that developer did not have a permit to remove all those trees. And I talked to one of the neighbors who was almost in tears, and she said there were at least 14 beautiful mature trees. They're gone. You can't bring them back. But I'm going to be looking into the tree removal rules, but hopefully that we could do something to stop this from happening. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers, first-time speakers? Yes, Mr. Bassoff.
Yes. Well, first of all, I noticed that I didn't use all my time in my oral argument. Can I bank that for a future dispute?
Denied.
Okay. Accepted.
You were well prepared, and
Oh, thank you.
congratulations.
And naturally, I'm pleased by the vote of the council, but even if the vote had not gone the way that it did, I still would have been impressed and grateful for the detailed attention that the council paid to a very voluminous matter. And it was clear that each one of you really delved into the issues. And regardless of the vote, I think it speaks well of the seriousness of the council. And I think all the residents appreciate what you bring to the table. And then on a completely different topic, Mr. Brescher had raised an item during the work session, a question to Mr. Bignell, something about a Camelot, and that just begs for further elucidation. He mentioned something about Camelot, and I just didn't know.
Camelot was, I think, the boundary lines and shrubbery, but we can answer at the end. At the end, we'll get to that.
Okay.
But it's Camelot, where
so
the property is down off of Jackson.
Okay, so it's not lot for camels. It's a place called Camelot. I just I didn't understand what it was
It's
about.
development.
Okay.
It's development.
Oh, okay, mystery solved. Thank you.
Any other first-time speakers? And right now, we can have rebuttals. Anybody with rebuttals? Mr. Christo?
Christo, South Edison, real South Edison, am I recognized?
You recognize you have the floor. It's
Thank
for
you.
rebuttals only.
Thank you. My first rebuttal, through the chair to Margot. I don't believe there was a conflict of interest with Margot, with the other council members, because
Council President, that's not a proper rebuttal.
someone said earlier that there was a conflict of interest. I disagree. That's the whole definition
Council President,
of a
the speaker
rebuttal.
this is not a proper rebuttal at this time.
Through Councilman, President Brescher, is that true? Is that correct?
Nothing to do with the.
All right. I know it is, but I'm not going to be playing baby games, so I'm just going to move on to the next one. I have a rebuttal with Joe Coyle, with something that Council President Joe Coyle, he said earlier. When I came up one of the times earlier and I gave my name and town, you then replied, name and address, and
Council
I
President, this is not a
disagree.
proper rebuttal. Rebuttal is for the opportunity to respond to another comment made by a member of the public. This is not a rebuttal.
Number one, I'm going to like to see the rule that we have for rebuttals, because if it's the same rule as the Board of Education, it doesn't say that. It says when all speakers have spoke the first time, they get a
It's not
second
an
chance.
opportunity to speak again. You have to
I'm
be
gonna
responding to
check the
something
rules,
that's been
but
said.
in regards to the rebuttal with Joe's name and address, he said to give your name and address, and I say, no, you don't have to do that. That's a proper rebuttal. And
Christo, do you have a rebuttal?
that is my rebuttal. He says, you have to, and I'm going to explain now why not. Can I please not be interrupted? This is my time.
No, I
The
will interrupt you
taxpayer-
if you don't have a proper rebuttal.
This is a proper rebuttal. The whole point of a rebuttal, someone says something, whether in the audience or from council, and I can disagree with that. And I can either agree or
No, you're
disagree.
just speaking
That's a
again.
rebuttal.
No.
No, that's not the case. That's your interpretation. That's not true.
It is my interpretation, yes.
All right,
I'm
well,
sitting
you're
here,
wrong.
I'm sitting here as the attorney, and I'm telling you that it's not a proper.
Well, you're wrong, and this isn't the first time you've been wrong.
Okay.
All right. So in regards, Joe, when you said earlier about the name and address, I did give my name and town, but you said name and address. And the reason why I'm disagreeing with you on that is because in the Open Public Meetings Act and the Sunshine Law, it says when it's the public's time to speak, let them speak. Last year, when Deal was the
Council President, it's still not a proper rebuttal.
I'm going to give it, Council President, if you tell me, if you think it's not, I'll
Unfinished.
you know, if you think it's not, I'll give you the courtesy.
Christo, you've spoke, out of 20 meetings, we've interrupted you 2 times. You say every time, 2 times.
I
20
can,
meetings. Continue.
I
Continue.
politely
It's your
disagree,
time.
but how much time do I have left? Because now he tore into my whole rebuttal, and that's the whole
Speaker's time has
tactic.
elapsed.
That's the whole thing.
Any other speakers on rebuttals?
Motion to close the public portion.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carries. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
Wait, can I?
You know, so let me back up here, I apologize.
You know what it is? I mean, I have to tell you, I do disagree with the way that we handle the public, where they ask questions.
we have some-
And wait, and then we don't answer them when they're here. And then they have to like sit here for another 20 minutes to hear all of our answers. But then we're not even going to do that. We're going to close off any answers to the public whatsoever.
My fault. I didn't mean.
But can
to
we
close.
answer their
Yes,
questions
right
when
now
they?
you can.
No, but I mean when they get up. Because right now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not taking notes. Unless Cheryl wants to keep notes for me.
I take notes.
Well, that's great. That's great for you. I want to answer people from now on. I'm going to actually do that. So I hope you kept notes and you can answer all the public.
Okay. I mean, it's my decision running the meeting not to. It's been done before. If you want to override that, I'll disagree with you. I think, you have to be consistent in what we're doing. We're just trying to be consistent. That's all I've ever tried, is to be consistent. Mr. Brush, I'm fine with your answer.
No, let me
I'm
tell you
trying to
where
be
you're not
consistent.
consistent. We had next councilman that
Point of
came up
order.
here.
Can we get one
Yeah, we-
person
let's just
to
move to the
recognize
questions.
and move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
You let Council President.
Crystal had a question on the DJ equipment. It's for the winter market. Okay, and that's answered there. The answer for the 619, yes, he requested the names that, we have the names for the people who are applying for this permit for the marijuana license. The bike rack was from Bruce Diamond. He requested a bike rack out front. Laura, if you can send an email to the BA about that. The appeal process to the attorney. Bruce Diamond had questions on the appeal and the process of what the next step was.
Yeah, I believe, Council President, the question was, could the applicant come forth with a new application, or revised application? Always, of course, they always have that opportunity to do so. I don't think the law allowed, though. I think what Mr. Diamond was looking for was some form of negotiation, and that really wasn't before this body tonight. Really, this body was sitting in an appellate review of a decision of the zoning board. And I think what we did tonight was really keep to what we were tasked to do. So I understand, as a practical matter, it's always great to try and find compromise, but that really wasn't something that could be done this evening.
But I think his question was, if the next party was to appeal, how long is that process?
It's entirely up to if the applicant wishes to appeal. He has the right to do so. I believe it would be subject to a 45-day period and it would be filed as an action in lieu of prerogative writ challenging the decision of this board. Mr. Bassoff is nodding yes. I think he agrees with me. And at that point, he would file it, and it would be reviewed by a Superior Court judge. And if that's the case, then it's true the township would be a party. So Mr. Bassoff would also file papers in opposition to that action, and we will handle it in the appropriate course.
And then I think last he asked, if to reach a compromise, he asked if we could, why didn't we try to amend it?
I don't believe that. Obviously, it could have been returned to the zoning board for additional review, but it was not the will of this body. The body voted, and ultimately, I don't believe that an amendment would have been appropriate under the circumstances. So I think that the board's actions, this council's actions tonight were in accordance with law. Yeah.
Thank you. And 59 Meyer Road, Laura, he mentioned there was some clearing on Meyer, and there was one at 2 Ramsey. We can look into that, perhaps Hank can that big
Yeah,
note.
we just get the addresses again so I can tell him.
I have 59 Meyer Road is where he lived at, not 2 Ramsey. There was a lot. Utica and Ramsey. And is that?
Okay.
Everyone's not here. Okay, and why it was cleared out, and if there were permits for that, and let's find out how many trees were going to be replaced. The traffic from Maria, the traffic on the Boulevard of Eagles, can we find out about that study? What's going on there? And still, there's no update on the senior center, and that's something we asked for constant communication with the BA. And I just also refer, not that you could expect your answer every day, but also the BA did open her email and her phone number to reach her as well for day-to-day updates. Okay, but we will get you an update, and I'll ask the administration to email you, Maria, okay? And then we had the theft of converters. Can we just reach out to can we get a report from the chief, Laura, on what we're doing for the theft of converters? As a lot of that's been going on. It's been happening. It's absolutely absurd how many times it's happening around town and all over the neighborhood. Then we had the Inman Avenue mess that's happening right by the Progress Street. The sidewalk is not being cut. I think it's owned by the county. And we'll reach out to the county to see if we can get some more consistent cutting there, which is not happening. Or maybe the town will just take on the responsibility and just do it.
Council President,
Yes.
Maria had one more question. You had the question about the crossing guards, and you weren't here when I was giving the Education Committee update. We have 8 applicants that's the good news. The bad news is that it could take up to 2 months or so for them to actually be approved. They have to be fingerprinted and some other bureaucratic things, but we do have 8 people who have applied. Okay?
Council members, are there any questions I may have missed that someone would like to discuss?
I think
Or have-
Manny Quello had a question on the trees and the process. The trees that were cut off by the developer, like what are,
I mentioned that was the gentleman from 59 Meyer.
yeah,
He complained about a property on Utica and Ramsey
okay.
that had a new construction. I'm sure they cleared it up.
And then Sandeep Ramakrishna had the public advocate question. I had a question on that. If we hired a town planner, can they represent the residents as an expert?
Can we have a town planner?
No, I think a public advocate, understand, you would first have to identify who that public advocate was, and then that public advocate would then have the ability to hire professionals.
Okay.
That would not be the town planner. That would be a separate person hired by the advocate, at the cost of the town, though. You would have, the taxpayers would have to bear that cost.
Okay.
But the professionals hired would be at the discretion of the public advocate.
And would they be paid through the town as well?
Yes, they must be paid. They cannot be borne, that cost cannot be borne by the applicant. It must be borne by the taxpayers.
Okay, and that was, okay, thank you. I think there were other towns that did it with the other way around, where the applicant has to pay for it.
Yeah, there's a court case on that specifically says you can't do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other council members for questions we may have missed? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
The tree?
I just addressed that,
A
the
street.
Inman Avenue,
Inman
and
Avenue?
Progress Street.
The ash trees that she asked
Could
about.
we have the administration follow up with Elizabeth Conway for
Send
the ash
emails.
trees? This has been brought up before. Every month, I think we've heard about this. It's the ash trees. The BEA is aware of it. On Inman Avenue, there's an issue with the ash trees.
No, it wasn't on Inman.
It's on Netherwood.
On Netherwood, I'm sorry, on Netherwood.
We're going to get back to it. We're going to get back.
They need.
Good. A motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion-